Alright, hello everybody. It begins. Yes, it begins. Welcome back to another live stream. Let me check out the sound. Alright, everything sounds good to me. How are we all doing today, everybody? I can see Roy Dean in chat, one of our active Discord members. Good to see you here. This is a good live stream to be in. Today we will be doing a tier list of the Roman emperors. Hello, Light X7. Welcome, welcome. Glad to see you again. Everyone is hopping in from the Discord. Great. We've got a double notification in the Discord. Almost 12 a.m. Coffee and snacks ready. I'm so sorry, Shad. It's always so late for you. There's that damn time difference. But I'm glad you're here. Alright, fair enough, Dennis. Glad to have you here right now, but man's got to get his groceries, I understand. Okay, so today we will be doing a tier list of the Roman emperors. I'll give you some disclaimers at the outset, right? I suspect we're not going to get through them with how long we usually take to discuss stuff on this stream. The tier list I have, as I showed in the Discord, and if you're not in the Discord, you should join, goes all the way to the end. And by the end, I mean, 1453. We're not going to do that. We're going to, at the very most, stop at the fall of the West. But I'm not sure we're even going to get that far. And yeah, I think LightX Heaven's right. We'll probably have to do a part 2 at some point. I suspect that's where we're going to end up. If I had to guess, maybe today we could get to Aurelian, or maybe Diocletian. That's already pretty far. Maybe Constantine. I know Roy Dean wants to get to Aurelian. I think we might be able to get that far. Historianus Studentius Reaxius S tier. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Yeah, well, we'll see if we get to Aurelian. Also, yeah. Diocletian would be a good place to get to if we can. Also, what we can do is if we get to a point where we've been going for a long time, we can start just doing the important emperors and skip over some of the, 3-month-long reigns. But, I mean, I intend to go through them one by one. And so, we very well may have a part 2. I mean, plus, it'd be cool to do the Eastern Roman emperors, the Byzantine emperors at some point, but my knowledge of them is just so much less than, the first, I don't know, couple dozen emperors. Oh, another disclaimer I'll give at the outset is that, I do a lot of Rome content on this channel, primarily focused around the Late Republic, but y'all remember, Rome is not necessarily my number one focus. It's not actually my area of study, just something I'm interested in. So, a lot of these emperors I do not know too much about, I'm going to be honest. And that's why this tier list is going to be more of a joint list, because I know a lot of you are super intense Rome history buffs, so you can tell me some of the facts, what you think, and I will moderate these opinions, because I'm sure we're going to encounter some disagreements in chat. Yeah, fair, light. What Roman content? I'm not sure if I've seen it on your channel. Reference every other video I do. Hey, Conquer. Hey, we got a channel member here. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. And I've got a little bit of music in the background. Y'all can tell me if that's too loud, too quiet, if you can even really hear it. I thought it might be nice to have a little something going on in the background, because this is not going to be a React stream. It's just going to be me talking the whole time. Or I was thinking, I don't know if we're going to do this, because, you know, we've got the chat going, and we usually go back and forth in the chat, but perhaps, at some point, if we wanted to, we could hop into the Discord and actually talk about some of these emperors. I don't know. That's if you guys are feeling it. Yes, the session is in motion. Alright, so I say, without any further ado, let's hop into this tier list. Alright, here we are. Oh man. Trying to real-time edit my setup. Whatever. Alright, I've got my little my little camera in the corner here. Alright. How well can you guys see what's going on here? I've zoomed in a bit, but I also might move the camera to the right. Alright, I'm trying to real-time alter this setup here. Okay. So, hoping that everyone can see everything fine. We start off with Augustus. Looks good to you. Alright, fantastic. So, and here are tiers. We have the basic, it's not like an S to F, but, you know, great, good, mediocre, poor, bad, terrible. But we've also got, as suggested by the Discord, especially Shad and Light, we've got Tiber Fishbait is our bottom tier, and Optimus Princeps is our top tier. Or Princeps, if you're pronouncing it correctly, I believe. Augustus, right up there. I mean, you can't not put him in top tier, right? This would be difficult to dispute. You know, our first Roman emperor. Oh, and by the way, you know, I feel it's worth giving a bit of a shout out to good old Julius Caesar. Of course, not on this list, not a Roman emperor, but, you know, we're going to be talking about Roman emperors for this entire stream. It feels proper to give a bit of a shout out to Caesar, the precursor to this whole thing, who, even though he was not an emperor himself, lay the groundwork for Augustus, lay the groundwork for things to come. So, I mean, you know, Augustus, a remarkable reign of stability, funded, really a golden age of arts and literature and architecture in Rome. All of these building projects expanded the empire, a lot of infrastructure across the empire. You know, just a lot of incredible stuff. Now, you know, Augustus is right at the top, and as Shad said, reformed pretty much everything from the law to the army. Augustus was not necessarily perfect, I will say. I think his morality laws were a mistake. I do understand what he was going for, but I think overall that was a bad choice. And probably the biggest flaw with the reign of Augustus is something that, you know, wasn't even entirely his fault, and that was succession. He really struggled to select a good, strong successor that would live up to his legacy. And to be fair, he had a lot of bad luck with that. And so, in the end, just as Augustus sort of provided a framework for all those other emperors that followed in everything he did, he also provided a framework, I think, with his succession, and that he struggled a lot. And, you know, as we might see going through this list, we're going to see a lot of emperors who struggle with succession, some good emperors who struggle with succession, and, you know, this will be a problem for the entirety of the Roman Empire, all the way through to the end. There's never going to be a stable system of succession. It's always a bit of a mess. Now, there are times when it's more stable than at other times, but, you know. And yeah, I think Light makes basically the point I was making, which is Augustus really tried his best with the whole succession thing. He really did. I think it was really some bad luck. It really was. So while I think it's something worth mentioning, just because of how important all parts of Augustus's legacy are, it's not something that I would blame him for necessarily. I heard one guy got succeeded by the Ottomans. What kind of choice is that? Yeah, that's an odd succession. Augustus founded the Praetorian Guard. Yeah, though, I mean, I'm even less willing to blame him for that, because he never could have imagined what that institution would morph into. You know, that's what sort of happens with things like that. Okay. That is Augustus, very clearly at the top. And now we immediately get to someone who I think there may be some disagreements on where to place him, Tiberius. Now, Tiberius, I mean, he's not a good emperor. I think we can all agree with that. I think the question with Tiberius is, how low do you place him, right? And this is where I think this, you know, it's pretty easy to put Augustus right at the top. But now we're going to have a chat about Tiberius. So Shad says Tiberius is pretty good or mediocre. Yeah, I don't know if Tiberius was pretty good, but I do think he was more average than he was bad. Tiberius's reign was hard carried by Augustus's reforms. I think one of the things about Tiberius, and I'm going to place him in mediocre for now, this is subject to change. Remember, one of the disclaimers I gave is that, of course, you know, I'm the one moderating the tier list, but I intend this to be more of a joint effort. So I'm willing to hear all these opinions, and then if you guys feel really strongly about somebody, I'll take that into consideration. Conquer says D tier in my opinion. I guess that would be poor in this case. Yeah. So the thing about Tiberius, Dennis is asking, is that I think a lot of it comes down to, you know, how impressive Augustus was, and how good Augustus was at playing politics and satisfying the Senate. And then we reached Tiberius, who had a pretty bad relationship with the Senate. He was fairly paranoid at times, and he could be quite reclusive. And of course, something we're going to see, and this is something we have to keep in mind, is that when an emperor is in bad with the Senate, that is not an inherently bad thing, but that means anything written about them is usually pretty negative. Because who writes the histories? Well, usually the elite senatorial class. So even if an emperor is good, if the Senate doesn't like them, sometimes the sources we get will be very biased. All right. We're getting some feedback to put him into good. I'm okay with that. I don't have strong opinions on Tiberius. I feel he's pretty mediocre. I would be fine with, you know, shifting him either direction. And y'all are given some good reasons. Strengthen the Roman navy, abandoned the practice of providing gladiatorial games, forbade some of the more outlandish forms of respect to his office. Yeah. Left a massive treasury behind. Alright. I think, like I said, for me, Tiberius is sort of more mediocre, but he could be on the light side of good. Like I said, he's definitely not down at the bottom, in my opinion. Alright, Dennis. See you in a bit. Propose an agricultural reform limiting land ownership to 125 hectares per citizen, 250 per family. Distributing the freed up land to the poorest Romans, usually free of charge. What the hell? You're some kind of damn communist? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Yeah, I agree with light. Alright, we'll leave him in good. I would say sort of lower in the good tier. Alright. I think we're ready to move on from Tiberius. And now we come to Caligula. I think, especially with y'all, from what I've seen, at least in the Discord, we're going to have an interesting time rating some of the most notorious Roman emperors. Because a lot of, like, Caligula, Nero, these ones, like, they're absolutely notorious. And in many ways for good reason. They were terrible. But there is also an argument to be made, and I've seen some of you making this, that a lot of the worst emperors their legacies are over-exaggerated. The bad parts are over-exaggerated to make them look more villainous than they actually were. So, Shad says Caligula, Tiber, Fishbait, or terrible. I think I'd have to agree with that. Bankrupted the Roman state after the rule of the notoriously cheapskate Emperor Tiberius. Yeah. The Senate is honorable and would never write false histories. Yes, of course, the Senate would never do such a thing. Yeah, so Christopher, I think we're going to try and get up to 476. That is the intention. We'll see if we actually get there. We've got a long way to go, and I think we'll take a long time per emperor. But yeah, that's where we plan to get to. Alright, I'm seeing some terrible. I think I agree with that. I know. Well, that's what I'm saying, Roy Dean. I don't actually, like, I'm almost certain we're not going to get that far. I think what I said at the beginning of the stream is that the plan is to get to 476, but we'll probably need a part 2, because today I think we might get to maybe like Aurelian, or maybe Diocletian. Yeah, and Light is right that accounts of Caligula's reign by ancient historians are so biased against him that the truth is impossible to disentangle. A lot of the craziest stuff we hear about Caligula and Nero is probably false, based on some rumors, or just wholly made up. And so that's why it's difficult to rate some of these really, really terrible emperors. But I think we know Caligula is terrible. I would agree that he's not Tiber Fishbait. You know, didn't do enough long-lasting damage, though maybe he was... Perhaps if Caligula was emperor at a different time, he would have done far more lasting damage. Yeah, and Chad makes a good point. You know, of course, we can glean some level of truth from these senatorial accounts. We don't, they're not entirely made up, right? There is a lot of truth there. We just have to interpret them with the bias that we know. Okay. I think we have Caligula in terrible. Next up. Yeah, and before I say this, Roy Dean makes a good point. It's kind of hard to do long-lasting damage when only 2 emperors ago you had Augustus. I agree. I think, frankly, Caligula's lucky at the position he was in. If he was at a different point, he could have done a lot more damage. But you had Augustus, who's the best to do it. Then Tiberius, who I think is more mediocre. Then Caligula, who's terrible. And now we have Claudius. Now, Claudius, during his lifetime, he seemed to get a lot of hate. He did not necessarily get the respect he deserved. I think he was disabled or something. He was, I don't remember exactly what it was. But it's been a while since I've studied a lot of these emperors, so y'all have to remind me. But I seem to remember Claudius did not necessarily get the respect that I think he deserved. He had some maybe physical infirmities. Earlier in his life, a lot of the people around him thought he wouldn't amount to much. But then he became emperor, and he actually ended up being pretty damn good. And I think, if Tiberius isn't good, then Claudius definitely has to be great. Yeah, you guys are saying the same thing. Claudius is great. An underrated emperor that's been slandered for so long. Brought back the building program of Augustus, expanded Rome into port by building Ostia. Yeah, I think, good administration, expanded bureaucracy, built more infrastructure, the building program of Augustus. These are all good things. And especially, like we said, it's kind of hard to mess things up too badly at this early point. But you've had Tiberius, and then you've had Caligula. I think Claudius was the guy to bring it back a little bit. Conquest of Britain, this is a very good point. Oh, and to pick up on something Light said a bit earlier, Caligula's reign must be judged in context, not in some hypothetical scenario. This is true. We can't judge these people on hypothetical scenarios, we judge them on what actually happened. This is why Caligula's terrible. Now we can maybe imagine what would happen in some other scenario, but that's not how we're going to actually judge them. Yes, okay, Claudius in great. I think we are agreed on that fact. Next up, another interesting one. So we've had Caligula, then Claudius, and then the other most notorious emperor, Nero. This is another one who, he certainly was bad. That is difficult to dispute. Yes, and Shad certainly does not like Nero. I think Light may have to make the other case in this circumstance. Now, Nero's certainly bad. That is clear. But once again, this is an example of an emperor who the histories have taken the bad stuff, they've exaggerated it, and they've included every rumor they heard about him, whether false or true. So this is someone who probably was not as cartoonishly bad and cartoonishly evil as we think of him as, but he was certainly terrible. So I think the question is, well, I think the question is terrible or Tiber Fishbait. Someone may make a case for bad, I don't know. Provided relief funds for citizens after the Great Fire out of his own pocket. There is that. Nero, the typical, he's sort of seen as a megalomaniacal figure, tyrannical, more interested in his own personal pursuits than in governing the empire. That's something we'll see in common, I think, with a lot of these bad emperors. More interested in doing something else, more interested in their personal pursuits than they actually were in governing, which, you know, tends to be sort of a bad quality for the emperor of, you know, the Roman Empire. Now, for a long time, there were rumors that Nero had started the Great Fire, but this is almost certainly not true. Nero set new urban rules to prevent more great fires of Rome, promoted the arts, peace deals with the Parthians. Yeah, the whole Great Fire, that's Christian slander. Though, of course, he persecuted Christians in the aftermath of the Great Fire, so you can understand why they'd be mad. Can you really compare him to Caligula? Significant reform of the tax system. Well meant but ineffective. Okay, so what do you guys think then? Because we're making the point that he's better than Caligula. Is he simply higher in the terrible tier, or is he in bad? Light says bad. I'll slap him there for now. He was bad, but he didn't really mean to be. The Senate would put him in Tiber Fishbait. Yeah, the Senate would put Nero in Tiber Fishbait. They'd put Caligula in Tiber Fishbait. They'd put a lot of people in Tiber Fishbait. The Senate is Tiber Fishbait. Yeah, Shep makes a good point. Some emperors that a lot of us really like, the Senate would put in Tiber Fishbait. So perhaps the opinion of the Senate should not be taken as gospel. Though, you know, maintaining good relations with the Senate does mean something. Can be a good thing. Sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes you need to go right over the Senate or frustrate the Senate to get something good done. Hadrian, for example, we'll get to him. But at other times, it is a good idea to try and stick in good with the Senate. Alright, we seem to be agreed that Nero is in bad, which is interesting. We've got an interesting list so far. I think already sort of diverges from the popular imagination of a lot of these figures. I think we've been more charitable than most, or you could just say more factual, because like I said, I think a lot of these histories are over-exaggerated. We put Tiberius in good instead of mediocre, and then Caligula and Nero, I think, are bumped up a tier from where most people would put them. But once again, I think that's just an attempt to counteract some of the bias we get in these histories. And I think Light puts it well. Not all of Nero's policies were terrible. He had some good policies, but overall governance was bad. Yes, and that's exactly true, Shad. I mean, one of the brilliant things about Augustus, and this is why he's right at the top, is that he was able to placate the Senate, make them feel all warm and fuzzy inside, while basically stripping power away from them and ruling as the sole emperor. It's real hard to do that. And, in fact, not only can not everyone do that, but most other emperors cannot do that. Even a lot of good emperors can't do that. And this is why Augustus is right at the top. Yeah, and, you know, a lot of these emperors, their legacies have been revised. In recent years, to be honest. I mean, a lot of this literature is still pretty active. For a long time, historians have maintained the biases given to us by these old ancient historians, but in recent years, especially since the professionalization of academia, a lot of these emperors have been reevaluated as new sources are found, and we take a closer look at old sources, and so, you know, a lot of these guys we think about a little differently than we might have a couple decades ago. Yeah, and Claudius is a good example. I mean, he was viewed negatively during his life. He was portrayed, I think, unfairly, and only fairly recently has that sort of started to shift. I think fairly and truthfully, right? Alright. So, now we have our first, I mean, not our first, but we have a bit of a crisis in the Empire. The year of 4 emperors. And we have a situation where, and this is something we're going to face a lot more down the line. So far, everyone we've gone over has had a fairly substantial reign to look at. Now, we're coming across a couple of emperors who were in power for a very short amount of time. Yes, the year of the 4 emperors. Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. Now, of course, Vespasian will last, unlike the rest of them. Yeah, rip Julio-Claudian Dynasty. F's in the chat for Julio-Claudian Dynasty. We're coming across an era of change. Wow, okay, interesting. Shad says Galba and Otho are bad, Vitellius is mediocre, and Vespasian is good, and Light says Tiber, Fishbait, the whole lot of them. That is quite the divergence. I would agree that, and I'm excluding Vespasian here, because even though he was one of these 4 emperors, he's obviously in a different category, because he would reign for much longer. If we look at Galba, Otho, and Vitellius, it's kind of, and this is the point I was making, where I say later on we have a lot of these emperors who rule for a year, less than a year, a couple months, a couple days. There's not, when you look at their reign, it's not like we can look at, okay, well, let's judge this policy and that policy. Their reign is them rising to power, fighting for power, and then losing power. Not my boy Otho. Butterlord, you gotta make an argument for your boy Otho. I'm thinking, at the moment, these two are definitely bad. These two are definitely bad. Light says Tiber Fishbait. I'm not entirely sure. I think to be in Tiber Fishbait, I feel like you have to do some real long-lasting damage that these guys, you know, being in power for such a short time, and their reigns primarily being fighting for power, I kind of have a hard time putting them in Tiber Fishbait. Now, terrible? Maybe. Maybe terrible. Otho has to be terrible. Okay. And this is the point where I'm not entirely sure. When I look at these guys as a group, and Light makes a good point, the range is so short, so little to judge them on outside of their usurpation. I'm not sure how to distinguish these fellas. Now, Shad is making the case for Vitellius, so I'm going to need you to tell me what separates Vitellius from Galba and Otho. Because when I look at them, you know, I'm seeing similar guys. And I don't think, I mean, Vitellius, you know, I'm not sure I can really put him above poor, but there's a spectrum here from terrible to poor that I think by the time we get through this list, a lot of these usurpers and emperors who ruled for a couple of months, they're going to be filling the bottom half of this tier list. Probably not Tiber Fishbait, but from terrible to poor, yes. Oh, absolutely, Vespasian wasn't nearly as bad. I mean, you know, he is one of these... four. But of course, he rules for 10 years, I think, much longer than the others. He brings a degree of stability that the others didn't bring. Vitellius just failed as an emperor, didn't have support throughout the empire, and he ended the practice of centurions selling furloughs and exemptions of their duty to their men. Okay. Okay, Vitellius. He's been bumped up to poor. Alright, I'll put him there. I feel... well, I don't know. Perhaps I could be convinced to put him in mediocre. With how he gained his power, it's going to be difficult to put him above that. But of course, you know, Vespasian is the same. Just Vespasian ruled for much longer. Suetonius is particularly responsible for giving Vitellius the reputation of being an obese glutton. What are the last words of Vitellius? In fact, let's Vitellius' last words. Yet I was once your emperor. That is pretty cool. His body was thrown into the Tiber, according to Suetonius. Cassius Dio's account is that Vitellius was beheaded and his head paraded around Rome, and his wife attended his burial. Interesting. So I'm thinking for Vitellius either mediocre and poor. And I mean, also I will say there's always room to move these guys around. These are not set in place after we put them there, so I'm kind of getting the feeling that by the end of this list, we might have moved Caligula down a tier. To emphasize how bad this guy was. But for now, he'll remain there. He was in fact abnormally tall, with a face usually flushed from hard drinking, a huge belly, and one thigh crippled for being struck once by a 4-horse chariot. Description by Suetonius. Interesting. I say we keep him in poor for now. Almost mediocre, because, you know, he is still a usurper emperor, and though we'll get a lot of those down the line, and we will punish them for that, you know, that will be reflected in their rankings. At this point, it is still, you know, very unusual. But this is something that will be more common. So, on to Vespasian, who I slipped into good. I think he's definitely, well, maybe not definitely. I would say he's, well, maybe better than Tiberius. What do we think about Vespasian? Yeah, Shad is right. Aurelian, Diocletian. We have a lot of good usurper emperors. But it is still a bit of a... I think it's still a mark against them, though it depends on the circumstances, you know? I mean, it's kind of like, if you're a usurper emperor who's then a great emperor, hey, there you go. It's like justified in retrospect, which maybe isn't fair, but it's sort of how it is. Too little info survived on Vespasian, unfortunately. Sorry, the Flavian Dynasty gave us the era of 5 good emperors. Yeah. I think there's some good aspects about Vespasian. I do think he's better than Tiberius, but I kind of have a hard time putting him into great unless we have a bit more. You know what I mean? To be put in great, you have to, you know, be great. Built the Colosseum. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Iconic. Though I believe the Colosseum... I mean, Colosseum was finished by good old Titus, I think. Let's wait 100 years to see if we discover any new sources. Yeah, that's the most accurate way to do this. Vast Roman building program, Temple of Peace, Colosseum, restoration of the capital, all good things, all good things. Yes, and of course we have the campaign in Judea, though I mean a lot of that was, I think before he was emperor, but concluded while he was emperor, if I'm correct. Okay, so what do we think then? What are your guys' takes? Do we have enough to slip him into great, or is he an emperor in the high good tier? I'm kind of thinking that he's the high end of good, but what do you guys think? Does he deserve to be bumped up one more? Butterlord says good. Tacitus Suetonius speaks suspiciously well of Vespasian while condemning the emperors who came before him. Or we could add another tier. That is an option. I mean, I don't want to complicate this too much. I mean, the original list had more tiers. I removed a couple of them because I felt like they were a lot. I don't want to just add a new tier every time we have a difficult decision, but if we wanted to, and I'm interested what you guys think, we could add a decent tier. So we have a tier in between mediocre and good. This is fine? I think this is fine. Yeah, okay. We have some differing opinions. Abdurman thinks that he's great. But I think most others are saying good, and I would have to agree. I think high end of good. I think to be in great, you know, great is a tier below Augustus. You have to do something real great, right? I think we're going to be selective with who we put in great. So I think Vespasian's going to be in the high good tier. And this is true, Shad. Though a lot of our sources come to question. All right, Titus. Titus didn't reign for that long. I think kind of a continuation of his father. Completed the Colosseum. I do think, if I'm correct, he brought some of the maybe not brutality, but some of the brutality of his father to an end. I'm not sure, though. I don't know much about Titus. I don't think he was in office for that long. I'm not sure what exactly we have to judge him on. Right now I'm thinking, you know, good or mediocre. The question is which. Yeah, we have some chat about Tiberius. Yeah, well, we had a lot of discussion about this when we placed him. I would tend to put Tiberius more towards mediocre. But, you know, we had some good arguments that though Tiberius was reclusive and a little, you know, paranoid and could be brutal, that some of his policy was good. He managed to save quite a bit of money, and so I think we plopped him above mediocre. Titus became known for his generosity, and Suetonius states that upon realizing he had brought no benefit to anyone during a whole day, he remarked, "Friends, I've lost a day." Alright. I'm hearing some good things about Titus. Open the Colosseum to people. Alright, well, we'll put Titus into good then. The issue is he didn't rule for that long, but the question is, do you think better or worse than Vespasian? It sounds like maybe better, though he only had a very short period of time. Practice of the imperial cult was revived by Titus, met with some difficulty since Vespasian was not deified until 6 months after his death. That's a bit of a wait. Reign was a bit too short for good. Yeah, I think this is where we have some difficulty judging. I think if we're just going like the ratio of bad to good, I think Titus would be in good. But of course, he didn't rule for very long, so it's kind of like, how much can you really get done in that amount of time? Though I don't know. I think he's better than mediocre. I really do. Now, I can ask again. Are we sure we don't want a tier in between mediocre and good? We could have a decent tier. I'm not trying to push it. We don't have to. But I'm getting the impression that we have quite a few of these guys who they're not quite mediocre. They're not 5 out of 10s, but they might be like 6 out of 10s. You know what I mean? They're like a little bit above average. Yeah, I'm thinking that, we might... Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. And then we'll have to, Alright, there we go. Decent. I think we're gonna slide, because I think I agree. Roy Dean's vetoing. Oh no. I think I agree that Titus is definitely above mediocre, but his reign is just not long enough to put him in that good category. Mark Antony Tiber Fishbait. And then I'm gonna make, I think, an executive decision and slide Tiberius down to decent, which is still above average. I'll say that much. I think that there's... The thing about Tiberius is there's good about his reign, but there's also bad. So I think it sort of balances out to a certain extent. And it doesn't balance out to average. It balances out to a bit above average. Though this may change down the line. Alright, let's move on to Domitian. Now, this is another individual who was disliked by the Senate. What I remember about Domitian, and to be honest with you, I do not remember too much about a lot of these fellas. What I remember about Domitian is that he was a fairly heavy-handed ruler, fairly authoritarian guy, and so, of course, the Senate did not like him very much. Domitian strengthened the economy by revaluing the Roman coinage, expanded the border defenses, initiated a massive building program to restore the damaged city of Rome. Domitian was an autocrat, but an effective ruler. Okay. And I think this is something we're going to run into a lot, is that from this point onwards, we're going to run into, I think, a lot of good rulers who are also autocrats. Now, I'm not a fan of autocracy, but we have to remember the context we're talking about here. Yeah, Shad has his notepad ready, with his notes typed up on all the emperors, ready to copy and paste. So, I think the question is for Domitian, it's either decent or good. It sounds like he definitely did a fair amount of good during his reign. You know, an autocrat who was, I believe, assassinated. In fact, you know what? Let me check right now. We've got the Wikipedia page open. Now look, if you're doing any serious research, I would not recommend using Wikipedia, but, you know, we're doing some base-level, factual research from Suetonius. Assassinated in a conspiracy by court officials. Okay. Interesting. Dispensed with the Republican facade, but he had an ambitious reign with effective administration. Oh no. Shad's back to the Tiberius question. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think in the time he had, Titus did what he could. Oh, man. Yeah, we've got a lot of debate over Tiberius here. I'll say that much. Okay, so it sounds like Domitian... Yeah, let's put a pin in Tiberius. Let's just leave Tiberius for now. We can come back to him at the end, okay? And we can decide where to put him. Big fan of Germanicus, so naturally hate Tiberius. Yeah, that makes sense. We'll come back to Tiberius later. I think the question about Domitian, it sounds like he was pretty effective. Absolutely. Does his sort of authoritarian nature or authoritarian actions bring him down to decent tier? Persecutions, you know, some typical stuff. Some fairly typical stuff. Micromanagement. I'm thinking low good for Domitian for now. High decent or low good. We'll put him in low good at the moment, but if good gets too crowded, he might get bumped down. And yeah, Germanicus was a Chad. I know there's a good series from... Is it by Invicta? I think it's by Invicta on Germanicus. Which I'd like to get to at some point. Alright, on next to Nerva. Oh, yep. Shad just mentioned it in the chat. React to Germanicus by Invicta. Soon. I absolutely will react to that Invicta series. The thing is, I can't promise anything soon. Nerva is definitely good. Not even a debate. No debate. Yeah, I mean, Nerva didn't have long in office. But we did get Trajan after Nerva, so that's good. Oh man, the Tiberius debate continues. Alright, does anyone have any strong opinions on Nerva? I don't really. I think, he had a short amount of time in office. I think it's a good thing there are too many videos for you to react to. Yeah, in a way, that is good, Roy Dean. It means we're not running out. Ooh, okay, we got a split between Nerva good or Nerva mid. I think, frankly, that the selection of Trajan sort of makes you good alone. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put him in mediocre. I think for me, it's either low good or high decent. I don't think Nerva did too much, but the selection of Trajan, I mean, I would put him low good. I think that decision sort of bumps him right over the edge, in my opinion. Yeah, this is a good point. You can't put any of the 5 good emperors below good. Alright, we're leaving Nerva in good. I could absolutely see an argument for decent, but I think we're gonna keep him in good. Like, low good, but still good. And then we get Trajan. Now, would it be funny if I took all of the 5 good emperors and just slapped them into good? Oh, man. That would be unfair. Trajan. I would put him up into great. I think some of you are going to argue for Optimus Princeps. And I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to listen to that argument. Of course, Trajan, a very impressive soldier emperor, expanded the empire to its greatest extent. In addition, I mean, building programs, welfare, the conquest of Dacia, or Dacia, if you want to pronounce it that way, of which Trajan's column is based on. Yeah, well, this is what happens when you title a tier Optimus Princeps, and, these titles are named after specific peoples, so... Alright. We're getting some strong Optimus Princeps. For me, he's low Optimus Princeps. Low. And I know, his title was Optimus Princeps. Trajan was second only to Augustus. I don't know if he was second, I'll say that much. But he was certainly a fantastic emperor. That cannot be disputed. I remember, in one of my classes, we went over Trajan's column. This very impressive feat. Talks all about Trajan's conquest of Dacia, all the cash money he brought back. I mean, that was a big achievement. Through the conquest of Dacia, Trajan brought a lot of money back to the empire. In his time, he was considered the greatest ever emperor. That alone means he has to be in top tier. Okay, like I said, this is a joint list. So, I'm putting him in top tier because you guys have him there. I sort of, in my broad view of the Empire, lean more towards what Roy Dean is saying, in that I think it's great that, you know, he expanded the Empire, but sort of, as Roy Dean puts it, like Justinian, I think he was too ambitious for his own good. He expanded the territory of the Empire too much. It was untenable. It was unsustainable. You know, good thing Hadrian came afterwards, I'll say that much. So, you know, he was a true Roman emperor. Yeah, and I think what Light says is how a lot of people feel about him. A true warrior, a true Roman emperor. This sort of idea. I don't hold, you know, I'm viewing these from my perspective, right? And a broad view of the Empire. I don't necessarily have to agree with what the people at the time thought. Yeah, consider the bigger context. I mean, this is why I had Trajan at the top of great, or at the bottom of Optimus Princeps, in my opinion. But you guys love him, so I'm fine putting him in that top tier. Yeah, and Dacia was an overextension, but I will say, you know, the conquest of Dacia did bring in a lot of money, a lot of resources to the Empire. So at that time, it was pretty great. Now, in the long run, you know, we have a lot of problems. But, and we're discussing the legacy of Trajan. Well, what better way to discuss the legacy of Trajan than to come to Hadrian, his successor. Now, out of Trajan and Hadrian, I gotta be honest, and I'm not giving an objective perspective on who's better, just personally, I prefer Hadrian. That is my personal preference. Now, that does not necessarily coincide with how I will rank them. But I like Hadrian a lot. I mean, Hadrian is exactly what Rome needed after Trajan to consolidate the conquests of Trajan, secure the borders. I love that Hadrian toured the empire, you know, actually finding out what was going on, finding the problems, fixing things. Hadrian was definitely the best choice after Trajan. Hadrian's policy of not expanding slowly weakened the Roman army. Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think Shad is right. Hadrian strengthened the Roman army. I certainly don't think he weakened it. I think I'm going to put Hadrian in great. Like I said, I often think that, you know, there's sort of the Trajan-Hadrian dichotomy, and whichever one you prefer says a little bit about your personality. Hadrian, the conquering, aggressive, ambitious general, and Hadrian, that was Trajan, and then Hadrian, you know, cautious, conservative, that kind of thing. I've always identified more with the actions that Hadrian took to consolidate and govern effectively, that sort of thing. Yeah, Rome can no longer expand anymore. Okay. Light makes the argument that Hadrian is Optimus Princeps. Zedediah agrees. Okay. I mean, I like Hadrian a lot, so I'm okay with putting him in Optimus Princeps. I thought maybe you guys would disagree. Y'all would want him a little lower. I agree. I think he's either great or Optimus Princeps. I think Hadrian's one of the best to ever do it, frankly. Hadrian's greatest legacy was the great succession he left behind. I see the comment, podcast lover. But I don't know if that's Hadrian's greatest legacy. I think Hadrian's greatest legacy is consolidating the borders of the empire. Okay, great. I think we're agreed on Hadrian. Let's move on to Antoninus Pius, or Antoninus Pius. I'm getting some comments that Antoninus Pius is underrated. I'll need to see the argument why. Hello, Dennis has returned. We'll give you a brief look at the list we have so far. Dennis, we've got Optimus Princeps, Augustus, Trajan, Hadrian, Great, Claudius, Good, Vespasian, Domitian, Nerva, Decent, Titus and Tiberius, Poor, Vitellius, Bad, Nero, Terrible, Otho, Galba, and Caligula. This is what we have so far. We've gone decently far, but not too far. In the words of Dova Hari, he did absolutely nothing for 23 years. Not leaving Italy, not once. I mean, look, there was... Yeah, I think Shad's making some good points. You know, the reign of Antoninus Pius was a time of peace, prosperity, and he was a good administrator. We have the Antonine Wall up in Scotland. You know, building, that kind of thing. But, you know, it seems like he ruled during a very fortunate time, you know. We have a lot of emperors who will rule during bad times and succeed nonetheless. Antoninus Pius ruled during a good time, but it seems like he was also a good emperor. So I think the question is Antoninus Pius good or great? He's absolutely a good emperor. And his reign was a fantastic time for the empire. I mean, his reign was right at the top. But him as an emperor, you know. Yeah, and this is true. Antoninus was meant to be a placeholder by Hadrian until Aurelius came of age. But, to my understanding, he survived a lot longer than they expected him to. Alright, I think I'm okay with putting Antoninus Pius at the top of good. Maybe low grade. Zedediah's making the argument for great. And I think, you know, we have Claudius in great. I think also Claudius is a bit of an underdog, you know what I mean? And so it's a little easier to see him succeeding perhaps against the odds versus Antoninus Pius, you know, lived during a time of prosperity. Oh, this is fair enough, Dennis. My knowledge of a lot of these guys is very fuzzy at the moment as well. And I kind of agree with Shad on Antoninus Pius that I feel like you have to do something to be put on great. You have to succeed against some odds, you know? And I'm not quite sure Antoninus Pius did that, unfortunately. I like the guy, I'll say that much. I think he's got a lot going for him. But I'm just not sure we can put him in great. I think top tier good is fair for him. Roy Dean, great is some copium for an emperor who never needed to prove himself. Yeah, I think that's kind of the deal. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with Light. He was a good administrator and did a lot to help, include free slaves and expanded access to free drinking water. What else do you want him to do? This is true. I just think I agree with the point being made that it's kind of hard to tell how good Antoninus Pius could have been because he was never put in a position to show that. But, and Lightx Heaven makes an interesting point of, if we compare him to Claudius, then is Antoninus Pius worse than Claudius? And to be honest, I don't think he is. I think Antoninus Pius is as good as Claudius, if not better. I do think, like I said, Claudius was put up against more odds, personally and sort of generally, and that makes us, I don't know, maybe empathize or raise him up a little bit more. Such was life for Uncle Claudius. Right? It's hard not to feel a little sorry for him, and then to feel impressed by all the good he did. Which I think why Claudius is up and great. I think Antoninus Pius did as much good, but didn't face as much opposition. So I guess it kind of comes down to a question of how we're ranking these guys, you know? I think Claudius was put to the test more than Antoninus Pius was. But I think Antoninus Pius did about as much good as Claudius did. I think I'm going to keep Antoninus Pius at the top of good. I know that Zedediah disagrees, and we might come back to him later. But I think the reason for me Claudius is boosted up a tier is because of the challenges he had to face. So, that's where we're going to leave it for now. And now we have Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, who was a co-emperor alongside Marcus Aurelius. But, if I remember, I don't remember much about Lucius Verus, so y'all will have to remind me. I feel like he didn't do too much, maybe. He went to war with Parthia, and did he die during that? And yeah, this is very true, Dennis. Interesting stuff with the multiple emperors. I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole with Pius of all people. Yeah, look, I mean, you know, with Antoninus Pius, it's like he's good. He's in, you know, he's above decent. We have that much. Yeah, that's what I remember about Verus, Shad. Good companion, morale booster, but just went around partying. I would probably put Verus into decent. I feel kind of weird putting him in good with the rest of the people who are in good, especially considering that Lucius Verus was technically a co-emperor, but in reality, he was the junior partner to Marcus Aurelius. You know what I mean? So I think he's going to go in decent. And now we have the man himself, another very famous one, Marcus Aurelius. More famous for his philosophy. You know, he was famously a Stoic, wrote Meditations. I think he's more famous for his philosophy than he is for his rule, to be honest with you. In fact, when I think of Marcus Aurelius, I think of his writing, not his rule. A man of good morals, certainly. He wrote some cool stuff. Yes, he did. Aurelius is great. And that's my inclination as well. But what did this man actually do during his reign? Campaigned in Germania, good morals and philosophy. I'm not sure that really adds too much to his reign in particular. Tolerant rule, and a good lawyer. Oh, absolutely, Meditations is a great legacy, but, you know, if we're ranking the Roman emperors in terms of their time as emperor, then I can't give too much credit for Meditations. You know what I mean? Even though I do think it's a great legacy to have. And I will say, his succession, I do think somewhat undermines his achievements. I mean, you know, he allowed his son to succeed him, which was truly a horrible decision. I think that... I think Marcus Aurelius is probably great, but... You know, I don't know. I kind of get the impression that he's maybe a tad overrated, just because of his fame from his philosophy. Aurelius was a strong administrator who proved successful at identifying talent in others and surrounding himself with capable advisors. Pertinax, who came from humble beginnings but was allowed to rise to the rank of general under Aurelius' rule. And this seems true. The bad thing that Marcus Aurelius did was his choice of heir, which is pretty bad. Pretty bad. But I think he's in great. Of course, his legacy as a philosopher, his campaigns. You know, he basically continued that era of the good emperors. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about how good he was at recognizing talent in others. It's a shame he couldn't recognize the lack of talent in his son, and that brings us to Commodus. Shad says, I mean, can you blame him? I think I can blame him. I mean, I understand that the rest of the good emperors chose good heirs because they didn't have biological sons. This is true. And so I understand the temptation if you have a biological son. And plus, it's precedent, all that, to put him in as emperor. I get that, but I think you can blame him for putting his shithead son in power. And Light makes a good point. Like, I don't think he would have done any differently, but I frankly think Marcus Aurelius bears at least a bit of responsibility. And, yeah, I understand. Shad says Hadrian would never have chosen Aurelius if he had a son. This is true. I think if any of these other emperors had a son, they would have chosen their son. But if their son was horrible, that would have been a bad mark on them as well. And then Dennis, yeah, some imaginary emperor. He did wreck 17 cities and lost us the empire, but he really knew his cooking. This is a funny, and I think good point. You know, I'm really judging based on sort of the practical impact on the empire. Yeah, I agree with you, Shad. I don't blame Marcus Aurelius too much. A little bit, but not too much. No, yeah, I agree, Dennis. I get the point you were making. I absolutely agree. Anyway, to Commodus. One of the worst. Absolutely one of the worst. Megalomaniac, his whole gladiator thing. I think he will probably be our first Tiber Fishbait tier emperor. Yup. Oh yeah, we are in, seems like, unanimous agreement here. Moving on. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about how shit of an emperor he was for longer, or we could just move on. And, I mean, you know, after him, of course, we get the year of 5 emperors. That's right. We had the year of 4 emperors, and we decided that's not quite enough. We're gonna have 5. And so, now, once again, we have a bunch of guys who each rule for a very short amount of time, and who I know not very much about. Though we just mentioned Pertinax, selected, apparently, according to Shad, by Marcus Aurelius. Humble beginnings. Crisis started with Severus Alexander. This is true, but the year of the... Yes, I agree. But, you know, But I mean crisis, not in that sense, but in the sense that after Commodus, we have a bad time, basically. Now, it's not as bad as it's going to get, absolutely, but we do have that year of 5 emperors. Anyway, we're not at Severus yet. We're at Pertinax. We have Pertinax, Didius Julianus, Pescennius Niger, Clodius Albinus, and then we end with Severus, who's sort of different from the rest. Yes, and Light points out, thank you for reminding me, Didius Julianus is famous for purchasing the position of emperor. So do we want to throw him a Tiber Fishbait for that? I mean, that's sort of an emotional reaction. To be fair, I don't know if his actual reign was that terrible, but he is sort of emblematic of everything that was wrong with Rome at that point. Oh, he didn't. In the river. Alright, he's in the river. What about Pertinax? Shad was talking about him earlier, but I don't actually know anything about Pertinax. We have a bunch of usurpers here. Is Pertinax, are we also tossing him into Tiber Fishbait? I imagine none of these guys are going to be, you know, even in or above mediocre. What do we think for Pertinax? What degree of bad is he? I'm inclined to slap all of these guys into terrible. I think we should add an unrankable tier. Okay, we can do that. We can add an unrankable tier. Okay, you can't see the text because I made it black. Unrankable. Alright, seems like Pertinax attempted some reforms, and then got killed immediately. So, maybe up there with Vitellius? Someone who didn't have much time, was one of these, you know, year of many emperors usurpers, but at least tried to do something good. I'm getting the impression that we want to put these two, Pescennius and Clodius, into unrankable, unless anybody has any strong opinions on these two, because I know basically nothing about them. Alright. I think we're at a good spot. I think Didius Julianus gets tossed in Tiber Fishbait because he purchased the position. Pertinax gets put into poor. Unfortunately, we can't put him any higher because of how he gained his position and how short his reign was, but at least an attempt to do good is going to put you up in poor. And then these two down in unrankable. And next, now, we finally have someone who ruled for a couple of years. Quite a while, actually. Almost 20 years. A lot more stability. Septimius Severus. So we have war against the Parthians, which I think a lot of people like. Did he do us any goodianis? Oh my. A Didius Julianus pun. Septimius Severus was a badass and died in my home city, York. Huh, how about that? Defeated the Parthians, sacked Ctesiphon. This is very true. Now, Septimius, I believe, is someone... I think Septimius Severus is an interesting fellow. I think he'll be ranked highly, but he is someone who, once again, I'm very fuzzy in a lot of these, so correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm thinking about the wrong person. Someone who was unpopular with the Senate because he was quite the authoritarian, a bit of a military dictator type. And to be fair, you know, we're now heading into the 3rd century, so we're getting to a very militarized era of Roman history. Those actions turned Rome into more of a military dictatorship, popular with the citizens of Rome, yet stamped out corruption. I think good is fair. And Zedediah points out his sons had to go and mess up all his hard work. Yeah, this is another situation where... Now, I don't think Septimius Severus was great, or one of the best, but I do think that, you know, if his sons, his successors, had been good, then maybe we would have seen better things to come, but we didn't. Strengthening Hadrian's Wall, reoccupying the Antonine Wall, discharged the Praetorian Guard after Julianus. Yes, some reform of the Praetorian Guards. Stripped members of the Praetorian Guard of the ceremonial armor and kicked them out, basically. Alright. And now we have his offspring, Caracalla and Geta. Is that how you pronounce that? And Septimius Severus was from modern-day Libya. How about that? And this is what I was talking about when I say that if Septimius Severus had had better successors, then the empire might have been in a better position. We get Caracalla and Geta. What I know about these two is, you know, two brothers who hated each other. And I believe the latter was murdered by the men of Caracalla. I'm not sure if it was on his orders or not, but they certainly had beef with each other. You know, two brothers can't get along, but they're co-emperors. I don't think the second one was in power for too long, though. So... yeah. And Caracalla, the one very prominent thing that happened under his administration was that he granted Roman citizenship to every free man of the empire. Which is, I mean, an incredible act. But, you know, it seems like the rest of his reign was not too great. I mean, once again, his father was a military dictator, and Caracalla basically continued that authoritarianism, but, you know, maybe worse, you could say, or maybe with less good reason. I don't know how you want to frame it. You know, he was also an authoritarian, we have some executions, all that kind of good stuff. Butterlord says, both in the river. Introduced a new currency. Interessant. Okay, what do we think about Geta, or Geta? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Do we know enough about him to rank him, or should he go in unrankable? Because right now, I'm feeling like he didn't do too much, he wasn't in power for too long. All I know about this man is that he hated his brother. Does anyone have anything else to share about him, or should we plop him at down in unrankable? Yeah, he was murdered. He was murdered. Light says unrankable. I think I agree. I don't think we have too much for this fella. And Shad points out something very relevant, which is with Septimius Severus and then Caracalla, we have this more militarized government. basically an authoritarian military dictatorship, especially under Caracalla, the army gets more prominent, he gives them more money, they start to get empowered. And then this leads to a lot of problems. The army gets more powerful. I mean, we've already seen the Praetorian Guard, slaughtering emperors to replace them. But now the army is going to get even more entitled. They're chopping down emperors all the time. To pay the army, the currency starts getting debased, aka inflation, leads to lots of problems. So it seems like we have one opinion that Caracalla should go in Tiber fishbait. I'm not quite sure about that. I think his reign was more mixed, but not good. I mean, I think we have a lot of problems to deal with Caracalla, frankly. I think I agree. I think he's more bad, because if we look at our list so far, I think Caracalla is more... And remember, we're just talking about the effects they had, what they did, not necessarily them as people, right? And so I think, Caracalla is probably more redeemable than some of these other characters we have at the bottom. I know Butterlord wants him into River, but first off, I don't think he's even bad enough to go into River, and then I think... the citizenship, that you can't understate how major that is. You really can't. Oh my. Okay. We'll move Verus down. I wasn't paying too much. Well, let's not go back to Tiberius. We're moving on from Tiberius. Shad, we cannot return to Tiberius. We're moving on to Macrinus. I mean, who even is this guy? You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. I really don't. Does anybody have any information on... Macrinus? Or is he an unrankable one? Who is that? This is a good question. Who is that? 217 to 218. A bit more than a year. First emperor who did not hail from the senatorial class. And also the first emperor who never visited Rome during his reign. Okay, interesting. Oh, he had Caracalla murdered. That's probably a good thing. Never returned to Rome. He wasn't emperor for that long. Attempted to enact reform. Additional monetary costs. Unrest in the military. His aunt, oh my goodness, instigated a rebellion to have Elagabalus recognized. Light X7 says not that bad. I'm getting sort of in the middle. Seems like he definitely tried to do some good, tried to do some reforms and bring peace. And he did bring peace, but... he continued the issue of ballooning costs, and he generated unrest, and then, he was defeated in a rebellion. Is he Syrian? Well, he's from modern-day Algeria. I don't know what his background was. Berber. He was Berber. I'm getting a very sort of mediocre impression from this guy. Or maybe poor. I don't know. What do we think? I mean, he is, I guess, a bit of a usurper, but I guess that's going to acquire less meaning as time goes on. As, like, everyone's a usurper at some point. Tried to reform the fiscal policy of the empire, but the military would have none of it. I'm feeling mediocre for this fella. Tried to do some good, did some good, also failed, and then was overthrown, basically. I think mediocre is fair for our friend Macrinus, who, you know... I mean, I'm sure I've learned about him before, but completely forgot about the fella. Now... we have a more famous character, Elagabalus. First off, what a name. And I know that was based on... I know Elagabalus was very involved with... it was some sort of religion, some sort of cult. Was it like the sun cult or something? Optimus Princeps for Elagabalus. The first transgender emperor. Yeah, honestly... I mean, I know Elagabalus was terrible and the sex scandals and all this kind of stuff. One of the other things I know about Elagabalus is that there's some speculation these days. There's some chatter. Some people believe that Elagabalus would be considered transgender. Now, you know, I'm someone who thinks that we have to be very careful when applying this sort of terminology throughout history, you know? Because there's different conceptions of things like gender throughout time, space, different countries, different cultures, and so to call someone transgender, first off, we don't have the sources really to back that up, and second off, I'm not sure if we can even apply that, but some people say that, right? And Elagabalus certainly was interesting. Elagabalus, Zedediah points out, Elagabalus would love OnlyFans, yeah. Elagabalus prostituted himself. And, yeah, an interesting character. A real interesting character. But my question is, and this is something I don't know about Elagabalus. Obviously, Elagabalus was pretty terrible. But, did Elagabalus do this, you know, long-term damage, catastrophic damage, that would need to put him in Tiber fishbait? Or are we dealing with another, like, you know, sort of mad emperor who just pursued their own desires? He was raised to the purple at 14. I don't blame him for his reign, really. Yeah, very young. He wanted to not only circumcise himself, he wanted to castrate himself and find a physician that could replace his parts for female parts. Yeah, I mean, look, Elagabalus certainly challenged the gender norms of the time, right? You can say that much. And, you know, once again, I make the point about applying modern terms throughout history. I think that can get very difficult. But yes, Elagabalus definitely challenged the norms of their time. I'll put it that way. Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I mean, I don't think I would have been as bad as Elagabalus, but I, at 14, would not have been ready to govern the Roman Empire. Okay, so what do we think then? I'm getting the impression that maybe not Tiber fishbait for Elagabalus. Elagabalus, put in power very young, clearly couldn't handle the position, which I think is kind of fair. Incompetent, just wanted to pursue his own desires, did a bunch of scandalous things, but for me, that doesn't really put you in Tiber fishbait, unless you've done something truly horrific to the empire itself, right? Alright. Then I'm thinking terrible. I wonder at what point in terrible. Honestly, I think better than Caligula. We have some people saying bad. What do we think then? It kind of sounds like Elagabalus could be high terrible. or bad? I mean, we have another one of the most commonly derided, most notorious emperors, Nero, in bad. So we could put Elagabalus there too. Do we think Elagabalus... I think Elagabalus was probably worse than Nero, but I think he could be in the low end of bad. Shad says terrible or bad. Killian says terrible for sure. Okay, tell me why you think terrible for sure. Because I'm kind of split. I think this is like a megalomaniac who was put in power at a young age, but someone who was basically concerned with pursuing their own desires, and so, as a consequence, didn't damage the empire overall too badly, though I'm sure certainly damaged the prestige of the position, the prestige of the empire, though I'm sure the prestige of the position had been damaged at that point plenty. Elagabalus did further. And Chad says he did some pretty horrible and gross stuff to his subjects. Yeah, I see you've been detailing that in chat. I don't know too much about how he treated his subjects. What I will say is that, once again, I'm sort of looking at the general impact on the broader empire. Was there anything positive about him? I don't know. I don't know too much about I only know the bad stuff about Elagabalus. I think Elagabalus is worse than Nero. Alright, we'll leave him at the top of terrible. How about that? I think Elagabalus probably is at the top of terrible. Because I do think Elagabalus is worse than Nero. So we'll leave him one tier down. And then who do we have next? Severus Alexander, last of the Severan Dynasty. Another young one, I believe. Oh yeah, and we mentioned this earlier. The really bad inflation. Now, the Roman currency was already being debased at that point. And Light says he and every other emperor. This is a good point. By the time of Severus Alexander, the Roman currency had already been debased. But no, I don't think he did start the trend. Actually, I think the Roman currency had, was already not pure at that point. But to my understanding, Severus Alexander did really push it, and certainly accelerated this trend. Which is bad. I mean, yeah, yep. Light makes the point. The currency was being debased before him. I'm kind of thinking mediocre. I think the currency is a really big problem, but it is more of a long-term problem, and of course you can blame that on him and a lot of people, though you can't blame the entire thing on one person given how much of a long-term problem it was, right? And as we're saying, the beginning of the crisis of the 3rd century... 13-year reign was the longest since Antoninus Pius. Second youngest. Prosperous. Yeah. He seems okay. Seems mediocre. Seems mediocre. I mean, we have, frankly, a lot of bad stuff, but also some good stuff. And though, after him things really kick off, things start getting really bad. Seems like his reign specifically was not too terrible. Alright, Maximinus Thrax. So we have a, so-called barracks emperor. We have the beginning of the crisis of the 3rd century. Also, we are, by the end of his reign, leading into the year of 6 emperors. Now, you thought the year of 4 emperors was bad. You thought the year of 5 emperors was bad. After Maximinus Thrax, we get the year of 6 emperors. Rule for 3 years, but never recognized by the Senate. And I think this is also where it gets a little bit tricky, because we have a lot of emperors during the crisis of the 3rd century who all they did was fight, well, foreign enemies, barbarians, and fight usurpers. And that's all they did, was just fight their entire reign for no real success. And so what do we think about Maximinus Thrax? Reordering says the standards is so low that an emperor that doesn't almost destroy Rome is considered okay/good. Defeated the Alemanni and secured the German frontier. Now, Durman says all fish bait, but, I think there's some, I do think there's some nuance here. I think our boy Maximinus Thrax seems... I don't know, maybe poor. Or maybe well, I feel like if we put Severus Alexander in mediocre, we can't put him up there. Mid. I mean, he was ruling during tough times. Senate, well, yes. Ah, neither from the senatorial class nor the equestrian class. How about that? We're gonna put him in poor. Maybe he deserves a little more, maybe not. And now we have the year of 6 emperors. now we actually do have Gordian the First, Gordian the Second, Pupienus, Balbinus, and then Gordian the Third rules for a couple of years. So, these 4 right here, each ruled for a very short amount of time. And I think I'm probably going to toss them all into unrankable. Unless any of you have any strong opinions about Gordian 1, Gordian 2, Pupienus, or Balbinus. Because I certainly don't. I just know them as, Year of the 6 Emperors guys. I really don't think we have enough to rank them on. Poor, I guess. Okay, yeah, so we could either throw them all into one of these negative tiers, or we could throw them all into unrankable. I'm thinking we put them all into unrankable. Because this seems to be where they deserve to go. Alright, next we have Gordian the Third. What do we have here? The youngest sole emperor of the United Roman Empire. Ah, we had Elagabalus 14. We've got Gordian the Third at 13. It's not a good thing necessarily. surrendered to the aristocratic family, as well he was very young. Severe earthquakes. Not good. Roman frontiers weakened. Not good. Sasanians under Shapur I invading Mesopotamia. Opened the doors of the Temple of Janus. Sent a large army to the east. Okay, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. He won a great victory against the Sassanids. Triumph. Yeah. I mean, he seems all right. Though a great victory over the Sassanids. That's good, but then we can't forget the rest of his reign. We have a lot of chaos. I mean, the crisis of the 3rd century, has begun. Roman frontiers are being pushed back. I think poor is probably where he belongs. Maybe better than Maximinus Thrax because of his victory against the Sassanids. I think that's pretty impressive. Alright, now we have Philip the Arab, or Philip Arabus, as he's listed here. This is another one who stands out to me, I think, just because of his name. What do we have here for good old Philip? Shad's gonna write his spiel about Gallienus and then come back. Alright, well, you can take your time, because we've got a while to go before we get to Gallienus. Okay. So, our Assyrian emperor negotiated peace with the Sassanids, betrayed and killed. Good relations with the Senate. I think that's pretty good. Reaffirmed the old Roman values, or virtues, and traditions. Building program in his hometown. Philippopolis. Okay. That's really short of money, though. Okay, that's not good. The creation of the new city, plus the massive tribute to the Persians, plus, of course, a donative to the army, made Philip desperately short of money, ruthlessly increased the levels of taxation. Ceased paying subsidies to the tribes north of the Danube. Yeah, these are not good at all. Not good at all, Philip. Yeah, he only reigned for 5 years, which for the crisis of the 3rd century isn't bad. Yeah, I don't know what I'm seeing here. It's not that impressive, Philip. I mean, the old Roman virtues part is nice, but short on money, high taxes. The frontiers of the Roman Empire continue to close in. I think, Philip, you're gonna have to go in bad, my friend. Not terrible. Definitely not terrible. And the fact that he was in power for 5 years is better than a lot of these guys at the time. And then we have Philip the Younger. I'm going to put him in unrankable. He was murdered after his dad was. Don't really think he did too much. Now we have a lot of these random guys. Decius. Revived the censor, persecuted Christians, killed by Goths. He ruled for 2 years. I think Hostilian's definitely going to go in unrankable. We don't have enough about him, frankly. Hmm. Yeah, this is not looking great, frankly, for Decius. There's some pretty bad things, my friend. You're... This is true. This is true, Abdurrahman. They are all going to be short of money. But, you know... Unfortunately for Philip, it seems like he also overspent a bit. But a lot of these guys are going to struggle with the money issue. Trebonianus Gallus. And he lost to the Persians. You know, you have a chance of going in terrible, my friend. You're at least bad. You might go to terrible. Peace with the Goths. Localized persecution of the Christians. Yeah, it seems like he had a tough time. Ooh, bad loss to the Persians. Yeah, I think you're probably sliding into if Elagabalus is terrible, then you're definitely terrible, my friend. Alright, who's up next? Melian. Yeah, he had a couple of months in power. Not much to see here. Valerian. Oh, yes, Valerian. Now, Valerian is a little more well-known. He had a longer reign, but most famously, and I don't know how low this is going to put him, he was captured as the Persians. Captured as a prisoner of war, and was captured for the rest of his life. So that's not good at all. Oh, and plus we have Salonius, who was a junior emperor. He's going into unrankable. Yeah, I think Valerian sliding into bad. Probably better than, well, probably low bad, actually. Probably low bad. Alright, I'm ready for your essay on Gallienus. We have reached Gallienus. Gallienus beat usurpers and some German tribes, but lost territory. The Gallic Empire... yeah, not great. One of the best Rome ever had. Brilliant and innovative ideas, unlike his father Valerian. He understood that Rome's frontiers were only held by heavy infantry, and once breached could not be effectively defended. And thus created a heavy cavalry corps, which he stationed near the frontiers to better respond to any threats. Was almost undefeated in battle and defeated practically an endless amount of usurpers, not to mention that the barbarians were literally invading from every corner of the empire. They raided Greece, Spain, Gaul, Italy, recognized great talent, putting Odenathus in charge of the east to defend against the Persians, expanded the system of the ducks to put them in charge of a large frontier with an effective army instead of having endless small frontiers, reigned the longest-standing emperor in the crisis of the 3rd century. Aurelian never happens without Gallienus, the perfect emperor that Rome needed at the time. My goodness. I mean, you put up a pretty strong defense. I will say, and I mean, I don't know nearly as much about Gallienus, but how do you respond to the charge that he lost a large chunk of Roman territory to Postumus with the breakaway Gallic Empire? That seems like a pretty big L to take for a Roman emperor. I mean, it's a sign of bad things to come. His only critique is that he couldn't prevent the Gallic secession. Yeah, that is what I'm seeing here. And I mean, to be fair, he ruled at a time of great chaos. Hey, Shaheen is here. Welcome, welcome. We have another channel member in the chat. Welcome. We're currently ranking the Roman emperors. Shaheen, do you have any opinions on Gallienus? I think, and Odenathus is someone I do remember, and Odenathus was pretty talented. And what I do remember of Gallienus is fairly positive. So I am willing to put him higher, but I will say, you know, I mean, you say, can you blame him? I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, yeah, you're in charge. Now, of course, there's mitigating circumstances. He had a lot of other things to deal with. A lot of other things, aside from the breakaway Gallic Empire. Absolutely. I still gotta list that as an L. I really do. I think he ruled during a very tough time. SBQR historian. I'm going to slide him into good for now. Has a great video on Gallienus. SBQR historian. Gallienus. Why he's one of the best. The man who... Okay, it's 40 minutes long, so we're not going to be watching that. I understand where you're, Shad. There are mitigating circumstances, but you know how we've been doing it so far. You know, in my opinion, if you're at the top, like it's at least somewhat your fault. Not entirely, surely. All right. I mean, that looks like a good video from SBQR historian. Unfortunately, it's like 40 minutes long, so if we did it during this stream, you know, we would, well, it would take us a long time. So, yeah, it seems like he couldn't have prevented the formation of the Gallic Empire, but then he struggled to bring it down and failed to bring it down. I think... it sounds like... I think you're hinting that Gallienus should be put into great. Well, first off, I don't know enough about him to give a second opinion. I'm not sure if anyone else in chat has enough information on Gallienus to rank him. It feels like great is a big leap. I certainly feel positively about Gallienus. I mean, what I know about him, I remember him positively. Where's Light when you need him? Yeah, good question. I imagine if Light was here, he could give a second opinion on this. Let's see if we can I've added him in the Discord. How about that? I'm gonna keep Gallienus. Ah, there he is. All right. Second opinion. Second opinion taken. Gallienus has been bumped up to great. That's what I was waiting for. I just needed some other input, because you're giving me a pretty convincing argument, Shad. And like I said, I mean, I don't remember much about him, but what I remember was positive. And I remember the figure of Odenathus as well. So with light here to put it over the top, Gallienus gets bumped up to great. I'm still saying the loss of the Western Empire is an L, but seems like, as Light says, he did the absolute best he could under the circumstances. All right, Gallienus slapped into great. Claudius Gothicus. Another soldier empire, as, you know, there are a lot of these in this era. Could any other emperor other than him would have been able to save him? Save it? Well, I don't know. There are some pretty great emperors. I don't know what to say to that, but perhaps. I think perhaps. Gothicus, conqueror of the Goths. That explains the name. Claudius Gothicus is meh. My goodness, he's got a lot here. I don't know too much about the man. Seems like that he defeated the Goths and defeated the Goths. Seems like that's mainly what he's known for. So I'm willing to slide him into decent for that. I don't. If there's any other achievements, maybe he could get bumped up, but if not, then he's probably going to stay in decent. And Gallienus was assassinated while on a final campaign to take back the Western Empire after finally stabilizing the empire. Looks like Gallienus shouldn't have been assassinated. That's another L for him. I'm joking. Claudius' authority was recognized only in the central territories of the empire, suppressed rebellion of the usurper Aureolus, and drove from Italy the Alemanni tribe. Alright. Well, we've talked about Posthumus, but he is not on this list. So, no. He will not be ranked as an emperor simply because he's not here. Also, I'm not sure if we would count Posthumus otherwise anyway, but he's not here, so we're not going to do it. Yeah, Gallic emperors are Tiber fish bait anyways. No, it's fine, Chad. Yeah, I understand you're passionate about Gallienus. You know, we all have emperors who we want to fight for, so that makes sense. Who we think are underrated. And, you know, Gallienus got his place up in great. Which, from what I've heard from you and Light and, you know, other people in the chat, seems like He deserves that great spot. Anyway, Quintilius, or Quintillus, getting conflicting spellings. Okay, Emperor for 17 to 77 days. What does that even mean? So is Quintillus an unrankable then? Is that what you're getting at, Light? It seems like we don't even know how long he was emperor for. Either 17 days or 77 days. This is seeming like an unrankable to me. We can't even agree how long you were in power for. Probably emperor for longer than that. Okay, but... Okay, reign should have been at least a few months. So probably on the longer end. 3 to 6 months. Still a very short amount of time. And if all that happened was he got the coin minted, that's going to put him in unrankable. It doesn't seem like... yeah. I'm not getting too much here. Unrankable. Yeah, Light... Yeah, I think we are correct. And now we finally... Well, you know, we had Gallienus, but apart from him, we've really had quite a long run of really not very notable emperors. Finally, back to someone more notable. God tier. Light wants us to add another tier. I'm going to put him up in Optimus. Optimus Princeps. You know, restorer of the empire, defeated the Alemanni, the Goths, the Vandals, did what Gallienus couldn't, I'll say that much. Reconquered the Gallic Empire, the Palmyrene Empire, Aurelian Walls in Rome, restorer of the world from a particular perspective. Well, from the Roman perspective, as the title suggests. Aurelian accomplished more during 5 years than some accomplished in decades. This is true. Aurelian had a very short reign. I mean, I guess long for the crisis of the 3rd century, but in general, for everything he did, a remarkably short reign. He got so much done in only 5 years. Truly impressive. The best title someone could have come up with. What a Chad title. Shaheen says, what are your thoughts on Elagabalus? We have Elagabalus in terrible, though I think we were debating whether to put Elagabalus in terrible or bad. Because, I don't know, Elagabalus was just basically someone incompetent, pursued their own desires, took the empire at a very young age, perhaps didn't do too much long-lasting damage to the empire itself, and so not quite bottom tier. Either top of terrible or maybe bottom of bad. That's what we thought about Elagabalus, Shaheen. Rome would have fallen without Aurelian. Yeah, there's a good chance. Yep, Aurelian Walls of Rome. I think that's kind of an underrated achievement, frankly. And yep, well, Light is saying, the barbarian incursions, to use that term, and then crushed the Gallic and Palmyrene empires. Very impressive, very impressive. Yeah, defeated. Yeah, Zenobia, Zenobia getting a little too ambitious. Aurelian had to show her what was up. The city of Orleans in France is named after Aurelian. Huh, I did not know that. Fascinating. Deserved. Yeah. Zenobia was way too ambitious. That was her problem. I mean, she wanted to expand too much, too fast, take too much Roman territory, when, she should have been more cognizant of the position she was in. She wasn't, and she paid for it. Killian says his economic policy was problematic, at least long term. Okay, we have a critique. I don't know what Aurelian's economic policy was. So let's see. Coinage reform. Yeah, well, I don't think Zenobia's thing was about being an independent woman. It was about, having an independent empire. But that wasn't going to fly, at least not with Aurelian around. Aurelian's reign records the only uprising of mint workers. My goodness. He didn't understand economic theory enough, but he had good intentions in mind. New coin containing 5% silver. Oh. Emperor struggled to introduce the new good coin by recalling all the old bad coins. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is similar to Diocletian. I'm not entirely sure with the effects of his economic policy, but it's kind of we're judging on the impact that these people had on the empire, but we also have to judge what exactly they intended to do and what they knew at the time, right? Because you can only act with the knowledge you have at the time. So it's, once again, of course, there's some responsibility there, but maybe not too much. Certainly not enough to... he's already in Optimus Princeps, and he's pretty high up in that tier. So, Yeah, and I think Light makes a good point. Compared to the magnitude of saving the Empire, those reforms are kind of a negative, right? It's kind of nitpicking. Sure, maybe big consequences, but he saved the entire empire, so. Zenobia once wanted to conquer the newly formed Sasanian Empire, but her dreams were crushed by Shapur I. Oh, Zenobia. Oh, Zenobia. Here, let me get this audio going again. Alright. Now on to Tacitus, not the historian. I'm unfamiliar with Tacitus. Restored power to the Senate. Yeah, is that... I don't know if that's a good thing. But mediocre. Yeah, seems like he did a bit of campaigning. Seems pretty mediocre. Seems pretty mediocre. Man, we're up to a bunch of randos again for a while. Then, of course, we get a big change. He didn't do that much, and his granting the Senate their old powers back didn't last past Diocletian, when even the old Senate would have elected a dictator. Alright, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. And then we're going to continue this list until we get to Constantine the Great. And that's where we're going to end it for today. I don't have as much... Well, I was going to say I don't have as much time today, but this stream will probably end up being quite long. So we're going to take a break, get to Constantine the Great, and we're going to end it there. And then we'll do the rest on another stream, part 2. But we still have a while to go. So right now, we're going on break for a couple of minutes. So everyone stay tuned, and I will be back soon.
Ave Caesar!
Hello, everybody. I see you've been keeping yourselves entertained. Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis. Oh, man. Oh, man. Alright. What have y'all been going on about? Office of Dictator, consuls. Very nice. Yes, Ave Caesar. I thought it was a good way to come back. Alrighty. So... yeah, I see you've put the Gallienus video in the Discord. I may or may not react to it, I'm not sure, but I'll definitely watch it. I just didn't want to do it during this stream because it's 40 minutes long, and we're already at 2.5 hours, so, you know. Maybe we'll do that another stream. We'll do a Gallienus stream. No, I'm not promising that, but we might do it another time. But it looks like an interesting video. I'll say that much. Gallienus, though I was kidding around earlier, but he seems like a real interesting character for sure. So yeah, I'd definitely like to learn a little bit more about him. Okay. Alright. Are we ready to get back to tier listing? Oh my goodness. Okay. So, like I said, we're gonna get to Constantine the Great, and then we're gonna leave the rest for another day. So, Florian. Now, who even is that? That's my question. You know what I mean? No, we went past him. Florianus. Alright, this seems like an unrankable. He's getting put into the unrankable position unless someone has any strong opinions on Florian. You do need to react to Germanicus soon, though, otherwise the gods would not be happy. Well, I'll put it this way, that Invictus series on Germanicus, it's the next Roman history series that I'm going to do. Now... does that mean it will be soon? Well, that depends on your definition of soon, you know what I mean? I mean, soon in the long term versus the short term. I mean, you know, so soonish, maybe, perhaps. I mean, yeah, honestly, some of these guys, you pull up their Wikipedia page, you're like, okay, we've got like 3 paragraphs. This guy's unrankable. Florian is a very Floridian name. The Florida man of ancient Rome. Probus. Probus is great. Is he really? Probus. Let's pull Probus up. Okay, he had a couple of years. Not bad. That's not bad at all. Successful general, conscientious administrator, secured prosperity for the inner provinces, withstanding repeated invasions of barbarian tribes. My goodness. This guy does look pretty great. The half-brother of Tacitus. Campaign against Gaul. In Gaul, against the Alemanni and this other tribe. Generals defeated the Franks. Okay. Holy, that's probably exaggerated. 400,000 barbarians were killed during Probus's campaign. Source Gibbon. that's probably extremely inaccurate. I mean, you know, we like Gibbon. He's an important figure in, I mean, history in general, but history of Rome as well, of course. But I'm not going to take his word for it. Yeah, seems like a military man, but a damn good military man. Cultivated and extended the army discipline of Aurelian. Less cruel, that's not bad. Not the sources to substantiate his accomplishments. Or at least some of his accomplishments. Helped restart the economy? Okay. I mean, this guy's sounding like a high good. Shad says low tier great. I'm curious to hear what other people say. It definitely seems like above decent for sure. I'm getting sort of high good, low great. Apparently there's clubs of retired businessmen, and they are known as Probus clubs. Huh. High good or low great. Okay, a fine line. So, now we have to do a bit of comparing. I mean, really, I think the question is Probus, should he be up there with Claudius? I think Claudius is the bottom of great at the moment. Does Probus deserve to be up there with Claudius? It's kind of sounding like he does. I mean, successful general, good administrator, plus, you know, definitely faced some challenges. Repeated invasion of barbarian tribes. I'm kind of feeling like Probus deserves to be up in great. Probably above Claudius. Put Gallienus above Aurelius. Oh, wow. Taking the position of one of the 5 good emperors. Well, at least with your description of Gallienus, I'm fine with putting him above Marcus Aurelius. I kind of think Marcus Aurelius is a little overrated in the first place. So I'm totally fine putting Gallienus at the top of great. All right, seems like Probus, good guy. How about that? All right, who's next? Carus. Let's see. We got a 1-year emperor. He died while campaigning against the Sassanids. Of unnatural causes. Struck by lightning. That seems unlikely. He was okay, won some victories. Okay. He's the lightning guy. Didn't return to Rome after his accession. Departure of the constitutionalism of his immediate predecessors. The precursor to the even more despotic military autocracy of Diocletian. Interesting. Finally putting down the arrogant Senate. Yeah, they're saying he moved away from the constitutionalism of his predecessors, but, you know, is that a bad thing? I mean, I don't think autocracy is a good thing, but the Roman Senate, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he had moved towards autocracy. In this case, I'd say kind of a mixed bag. Annexed some territory, you know, had some successful conquests, but then died on campaign. Cut short. Seems like pretty mediocre, I would say. Someone who maybe had the potential to do more had he been given more time on this earth, but he wasn't. And so we have to judge him on what he did. Seems quite mediocre. I don't think autocracy is a good thing, says the guy who fashions himself a supposed emperor. Yep, you can remove the supposed from that. Alright, good old Carus, you're going into mediocre, my friend. Who do we have next? Carus and Carinus were both mediocre at best. Okay, the two sons of Carus, Numerian and Carinus. From what I have here, Numerian may be an unrankable one. 1 year. Yeah, Dennis is correct. I forgot to add when anyone besides myself does it. Yeah, I think Numerian's unrankable. And then Light makes the point that Carinus is also mediocre, just like his dad. What do we have here about Carinus? Yeah, so, yeah, okay. Debauched and incapable, but filtered through the propaganda of Diocletian. Seems like, we should put him in mediocre. Maybe we have some more negative things about him, but Diocletian, who had nothing to do with any of this, of course, funded some negative propaganda about Carinus. So, well, we'll just put him into mediocre for now. And now we get to someone interesting again. Diocletian. Oh my. Oh my. We've got a lot to talk about here. Really fascinating character. So, obviously, we just talked about how, you know, Diocletian would become increasingly authoritarian. But Diocletian stabilized the empire. He founded the Tetrarchy. And, you know, I know there's some disagreement on the Tetrarchy. I think it was a great try. Some people are less positive. I think it was a good attempt. I think Diocletian, you know, he saw where the empire was. He saw where the empire was headed. He realized that some division of power was needed, and he made an attempt. Now, the Tetrarchy would fall apart after he was gone, but I think it wasn't a bad idea. You know, he established more bureaucracy. You know, his Tetrarchy system with all the new capitals, standardized taxes. You know, he did a lot of stuff. Some more, some less successful. I remember his price controls didn't help. Didn't really work. You know, economics kind of struggled with. Once again, didn't really have an understanding. Well, that's the thing. Diocletian standardized succession, which then fell apart. Those taxes stayed in place until 1453. I'm going to put Diocletian up in Optimus Princeps. I think probably a lot of people would not have him quite that high. And I think the long-term effects of Diocletian were interesting. I don't know if you could rate it good or bad. Yeah, so as Light's pointing out, his economic reforms introduced proto-feudalism. This is when we already see some signs of this, but with Diocletian, we really start seeing a transition towards sort of feudal medieval Europe, which is probably a bad thing, but not to moralize, it's just a very interesting change. Yes, and Diocletian separated and enlarged the civil and military bureaucracies, which I agree was badly needed. I think Diocletian belongs in Optimus Princeps. I think that he did a lot. Some of it wasn't successful. Some of it led to negative consequences. Some of it led to consequences that he never could have imagined. But I think with the information he had at the time, he did the best he could. And I think he had some good ideas, like the Tetrarchy. The empire had to split. It really did. And, well, the thing about, Light points out Diocletian's retirement. It's an interesting one because it was seen as very virtuous in Rome, and I think still is seen as virtuous today, maybe a value that we get from Rome, to step back from a life of power and, go and be a cabbage farmer or something like that, as Diocletian did at his, impressive palace. I do think there's some virtue to that, but, he lived to see his system completely fall apart, basically. Not completely, but he lived to see the chaos that would ensue after he retired. So, I don't know. I think there is something virtuous about retiring from power, but it's maybe not as virtuous when you see your life's work crumbling around you. I think, honestly, we get to a question of where exactly does Diocletian belong in this top tier? Because I know that Hadrian and Trajan are beloved, but I think Diocletian faced much tougher odds. And he did so much that, I want to move him up the Optimus Princeps tier. I would say past Hadrian and Trajan, in my opinion. Or, at least past Hadrian. I think past Trajan as well, frankly. I know Trajan was a great conqueror, expanded the empire, was very generous, but I think the work that Diocletian did, the attempts, the reforms, the bureaucracy, the change he brought, in my opinion, moves him past these two. I really do. And I think, for similar reasons, Aurelian, we moved him all the way up, because he faced such tough odds. Now, of course, Aurelian had stabilized things, and it's been a bit by the time of Diocletian, but Diocletian was also facing a really difficult situation. Here's a quote from Diocletian when being begged to return to power. He definitely wouldn't dare suggest that I replaced the peace and happiness of this place with the storms of a never-satisfied greed. Diocletian just wanted to farm his damn cabbages. Well, sort of the poster child of that sort of retirement was Cincinnatus. Which I remember, of course, because George Washington was often referred to as the American Cincinnatus. But, and to be fair, this is sort of the point I'm making about Diocletian. I'm not saying he should have returned to power, but if you look at an example like George Washington, he retired, and then when people begged him to come back into power, he came back and he did a great job. Now, I'm not sure if that's how it would have worked with Diocletian, because everything was a total mess. But, retiring to be a cabbage farmer is great, but if everything you worked on then falls apart, that's less great. But I still think Diocletian is right up there, alongside the best. Cincinnatus came to power, retired, came to power, retired again, which is, what Washington did as well, which is probably why the two are compared. All right. I think Diocletian's a fascinating character. Like, when you're talking about the transition from the Roman Empire to feudal Europe, he plays an important role, some real interesting stuff, but I think we've covered Diocletian. Now it gets even more complicated. We have a lot of emperors because of the Tetrarchy. Now, of course, the Tetrarchy is eventually going to be supplanted by one man, but we have a couple of years with a lot of emperors either with the Augustus title or the Caesar title. Diocletian ended the Principate definitively. The dominant began. And he was the son of a freed slave. Wow, I didn't know that. And yeah, Light points out that Diocletian's palace is still sort of around. Yeah, I've seen pictures of his palace, which I think is in... is it in, like, Croatia or something? I think it's in the Balkans, I think. It looks like a really, really cool historical site to visit. Anyway. Well, actually, not really past Diocletian. We come to one of the Tetrarchs, Maximian, co-emperor to Diocletian. Now, Maximian is, you know, sort of framed as the brawn to Diocletian's brains. He has a rather interesting career, though. I think, as co-emperor to Diocletian, fairly, as far as I know, fairly successful, you know, military leader, etc., etc. But then, as Chad is pointing out, it got a little more complex in later years as he emerged from retirement to try and seize power, and it didn't really work, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Supported by Diocletian throughout, didn't do too much on his own. Yeah. I think Maximian's probably a mediocre one. Only as good as long as Diocletian was around. Yeah, I think that's very much true. And he caused problems later in life. Oh my, yeah. You know, seems like it'd be easier not to use the full title. Alright, Maximian and mediocre. Now we have a couple of others. Some of these are not so important, but, I mean, you know, Constantius is important mainly because of his son, you know? I mean, he was one of the original junior tetrarchs, but, I mean, of course, Constantius is remembered because of his son. Yeah, if we started using the full titles of Roman emperors, or frankly, a lot of emperors slash kings throughout history, it would take us a lot longer to discuss any sort of history. Now, I don't know too much about Constantius, aside from his son. And of course, by the way, we have Constantius and Galerius, who were the other original tetrarchs. The nickname Chlorus, the Green. Interesting. What do we think about Constantius? Does anyone have any strong opinions on Constantius? Looks like some successful campaigning. Oh, yeah. The Great Persecution of Christians. Didn't actively hunt Christians down. That's not bad. Stabilized Britain. Yeah, Zedediah likes Constantius because he died in York. A prolific user of Reddit. Launched a successful punitive campaign against the Picts beyond the Antonine Wall. Alright, we gotta dock him for that. That's an L. Don't be attacking the Picts. Come on now. I don't know. I mean, it seems like Constantius was, I don't know, maybe like decent? Seems better than mediocre. I mean, the main thing he did was sort of lay the groundwork for his son to come to power. I don't know, what do you guys think? This kind of seems like a decent to me. Constantius was he was a general. He was a general. Seems like he was a pretty good general. And of course, we also get into a complicated situation where we have these tetrarchs, so, what he could do was also contained. Decent. Yeah, I think decent is the right place for him. He seems above mediocre. I mean, we've got him above Maximian. But can't quite be good, given what he did in the situation he was in. Alright, let's do Galerius next, because we've got a bunch of others, but we'll do Galerius. So another original Tetrarch, campaigned against the Sassanids in the east, I believe. Constantius is out west, Galerius is out east. Shad's a big fan. Alright, Shad, make your case for Galerius. Ended the persecution of Christians, Edict of Toleration. He's great for the cabbage stunt alone. I don't know what you're referring to. He was very into the persecution of Christians, but before his death, he stopped the persecutions. Alright, I'm hearing there's a YouTube short on Galerius cabbage. Galerius cabbage. Also, this will be added to the list. What? Does anyone... Oh, by History March. History March. Man, it'd be nice if YouTube would help me out here. Damn. Does anyone have a link to this short? Because it is not popping up. Oh, is it this one? How did a... Or no, this one. How did a Roman emperor infiltrate a Persian camp alone? Is this the short we're talking about? Great.
The
Alright, we have a reaction to do. Let's regulate the audio.
Old Galerius walked up to the Sasanian camp, accompanied by 2 Armenian nobles. The 3 tried to gain entry, disguised as market gardeners, intending to sell cabbage. The ruse worked, and, looking like 3 peasants, they were now free to have a look around the enclosure. As they moved...
Cabbage salesman! You gotta love it.
through the camp, offering to sell their cabbages, Galerius spotted a weak section of the outer palisade that was fairly close to the woods, and noted that Narsa's inner royal enclosure was vulnerable.
Cabbage salesman imperator.
The Caesar now had a plan, and the three men casually started walking back towards the gate, trying not to arouse suspicion.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. You gotta love, there was a lot of cabbage content going on. Diocletian was farming cabbages that, Galerius was pretending to sell to the Persians. How about that? Yeah, wow, what a moment. Okay, so Galerius was a Chad, basically. That's what I'm getting. Loved persecuting Christians and then quit later in his life. Had these, seemingly impressive victories. We'd eventually sack Ctesiphon. How about that? Alright then. You guys seem to really like him. You think he's a Chad. Seems like he was. What rank does that deserve? Obviously, we have to consider his reign as a whole, plus how, constrained it was given his position. Where would we place him? Zedediah says great. What do the rest of you think? Galerius was unable to stabilize the Tetrarchy. Yeah, well, that was a tough task, I imagine. Galerius' campaign resulted in a favorable peace treaty with the Sassanids. Unheard of. Yeah. Decent overall. Okay, interesting. So Zedediah says great. Light says decent. Pretty good, says Shad. Okay. Any other opinions? Being the centrist fence sitter I am, I feel like I'm going to put him in good, in between what I'm getting. And it seems like he was good. Low good, final offer. Good. Alright, Abdurrahman says good. Seems like good to me. I'd say good is a good middle ground between great and decent. I would say the same thing. How good is he, though? That's the question. It's kind of tough because he was an emperor in the East. Augustus for a while. I feel like it's a little difficult to compare him to, emperors of the entire empire. You know what I mean? I think better than Nerva. Yeah. And maybe here, with bonus points for cabbage. Bonus points included. Yeah, I do always love a good story about, some emperor or some king or some general doing something like that not entirely on his own, but on his own, really asserting himself. It reminds me of that story about, not the same, but it reminds me a little bit of that story of Belisarius, frightening off the Persians with how threatening his camp and his men appeared to be. Light says the honest assessment is probably decent, though. I'm curious. We've got him in good. He's probably going to stay there, but I'm curious, Light. Why do you say decent? You've heard a lot of good things about him. What is not so good or more mediocre? The persecution of Christians, I guess. And while Light thinks about that, We have a couple of kind of randoms, to be honest with you. Well, I'm not deducting points for persecution. I put him in good. Plus, even if you deducted points for I mean, dude, Diocletian's place at the top, that is with faults considered. I'll put it that way. With persecution considered. Because, you know, I mean, it's not a good thing. You know what I mean? But, that's why I'm asking Light. I'm curious, like, what was the rest of his legacy? Well, I mean, yeah, Shad. That's why he's still in the top. Even with points deducted for persecution. Alright. Valerius Severus and Domitius Alexander II. Who are these people? Galerius doesn't seem to rise to the level of the others in good. I kind of agree with that, Light. That's the issue I'm having, just because Galerius was Emperor of the East, right? But I feel like Galerius is at the level of Nerva. You know what I mean? Maybe not Domitian. Maybe that was a little generous, but I think I'm gonna keep Galerius there. I think he's sort of a low good. As an emperor, remember, we're not judging them as people or judging them as specifically generals or how much of a Chad they were. That's not what we're judging. We're judging as emperor. Alright, does anyone know anything about these two? Or are they just going to go into unranked? I'm guessing these were maybe junior emperors of the time. Oh, no, this guy was an Augustus. But for 1 year. Is that really enough to judge him upon? Okay. This was during sort of the chaos of the late Tetrarchy. Yeah, I'm putting this one into to unrankable. And I don't think this guy even has a Wikipedia page. Yeah, you're going in unrankable too. Okay, Maxentius is a little more important. So we'll do him right before... We'll do... I don't know, I feel like... Oh, wow. You know, this guy actually reigned for a while. We're gonna do Maxentius and Constantine last. Because, you know, they're actually important. Maximinus... What on earth? I think it's Daza. A committed pagan. He engaged in one of the last persecutions of Christians before issuing an edict of tolerance. What is up with these guys persecuting Christians, then issuing edicts of tolerance before they die? Yeah, it seems like this guy was just here to cause more chaos in the Tetrarchy. Honestly, I know he was here for 3 years, which is a bit, but I might just give him unrankable. Because it's kind of hard to rank someone like this as Emperor, you know? You're going into unrankable. And if I was going to rank you, it would be bad. I'll tell you that much. Licinus. Now, this guy was around for a lot longer. Maybe some of you have some opinions on this fella. Co-authored the Edict of Milan. Wow. I didn't know that. Augustus in 308. Okay, okay. Official Augustus of the West, but also possessed part of the eastern provinces. Huh. Okay. Suddenly elevated to the rank of Augustus by his friend Galerius. Seems like some positive stuff. I mean, this is another person who seems to have... I mean, we're talking about the chaos of the Tetrarchy, the late Tetrarchy. Well, when I say late Tetrarchy, what I mean is after Diocletian. You know, this is someone who dealt with that chaos and fought a lot. Interesting. Okay. We're getting some positive stuff here. Yeah, Shad, you moved on to Maxentius. We're getting to him next. We're on Licinus right now. I'm thinking Licinus is, I'm almost... It's tough. I'm not going to not rank him, because he was around for a while. He was Augustus for a while. I'm thinking maybe a decent... Maybe a low decent? I don't know. What do we think? What does everybody think? Reigned for a long time, but that's what I'm getting the impression didn't... Maybe mediocre then. Didn't accomplish too much. Co-authored the Edict of Milan, apparently. I didn't know that. That's kind of a big deal. Maybe that would bump him up a little bit. Defeated by Constantine. I don't know. I mean, he doesn't seem terrible. He doesn't seem, you know... He's not below mediocre. But he's not above decent. I'll tell you that much. I think maybe the lowest of... you know what? No. Considering who else we have, I think he's probably going to be mediocre. We're slotting him right into the middle of mediocre, I think. And we can move on to our last two of today, because it's already been 3 hours. Our last two of today, Maxentius and Constantine the Great. Now, of the last few we've just talked about, these are the actual important ones. And Bogdan points out something very relevant, which is Constantine took care erasing a lot of the information about him, negative propaganda, etc., etc., and then Shad was talking about Maxentius tried his hardest to restore the importance of Rome, made it the capital again, constructed public works and defenses, recognized by the Senate, but not his fellow emperors. So, what I remember about Maxentius, because he is a more relevant character, is mainly his fight against Constantine, right? So someone who wanted to reestablish the old Roman ways. That's very interesting. Zedediah, you know, is being paid by the York Tourism Bureau as it continues to promote it, as it plays a prominent role in this part of Roman history. But as I was saying, when I think about Maxentius, I mainly think about him as a player in the story of Constantine. But it does seem like he was certainly more than that. He was someone who wanted to return to the old ways of the good old Roman Empire. Which, perhaps that was a little, naive at that point. I don't know. He did try. He failed. He was defeated at the Milvian Bridge by our good old Christian Emperor Constantine. So, I mean, some of you are saying positive things about Maxentius. Seems like, I mean, the issue with Maxentius is that you're saying positive things, but in the long run, his legacy is not too important. You know what I mean? What is the long-term effect of Maxentius? Not much. He got defeated by Constantine, and then Constantine completely overshadowed him. You know, he's remembered as a bit player in the rise of Constantine. As Light puts it, pretty short reign, mostly spent getting beat around by Constantine, right? So I'm kind of having a hard time putting him above decent. Honestly, like, a lot of the Tetrarchs, you know, the mediocre, decent, we got a lot of Tetrarchs gathered around here. Apart from Diocletian, who's right at the top. I'm thinking that Maxentius... What do we think? Does Maxentius go below or above Constantine's father, Constantius? I feel like that would say something. Okay, Light feels that Maxentius is rather incompetent. Make your case, please. I'm willing to listen. Right now, it seems like Maxentius was well-meaning, but unsuccessful. Why, you know, exactly why was he incompetent? Just because he failed to achieve his goals? And yeah, and Shad talks about his city constructed in 1607, longer than most of the American cities. Yeah. I mean, the oldest permanent English settlement is Jamestown, which was established in 1607. But, of course, you know, there were other European settlements, and there were indigenous peoples there before, so, you know, Jamestown is only important for that English history of settlement, not more broadly. Okay, Maxentius has been demoted. Lost control of African provinces. Oh my goodness. He's getting placed right next to his daddy. Alright, seems fair. Maxentius has been dropped into mediocre. Sorry, Maxentius. Maybe some good ideas about restoring Rome, but, you know, wasn't gonna happen, my friend. Wasn't gonna happen. Well, I mean, if Delhi was founded in 400 BC and York was founded in 71 AD, then Delhi's winning that battle. Maxentius failed to take any competent countermeasures to resist Constantine. Seems fair, seems fair. Alright, now, are we ready? We've been talking about him for a while now. You know, Constantine is sort of looming over the future of the Tetrarchy the entire time we talk about it. And here we have him, Constantine the Great. unifier, reunifier of the Roman Empire. Obviously, at the top. I mean, there's the religious perspective on him, Christian, that kind of thing. I don't really care that much about that, though it's an important change, the Edict of Milan. Reorganized the army. Good. Obviously a strong warrior general. Fought a bunch of civil wars. Barbarians. He had the Council of Nicaea. Real important to early Christian history. Or maybe not early, but Christian history. Abolished the Praetorian Guard. Alright, I'm getting a lot of Optimus Princeps. I will say I think it's a little bit sad that the Tetrarchy didn't make it. And of course Constantine truly brought the Tetrarchy to its end. But even before Constantine, the Tetrarchy was kind of in chaos. So it's not really his fault. Did we get to the homie Claudius yet? Well, it depends on which Claudius you're talking about. The original? We did the original Claudius. To combat inflation, he introduced the solidus, a new gold coin that became the standard for Byzantine and European currencies for more than 1,000 years. Yeah, Velasca. Yep, we did Claudius the one a few after Augustus. We put him in great. The Roman army was reorganized to consist of the Limitanii. Yeah. Now, I think that might be his greatest achievement, frankly, his greatest legacy. I mean, apart from all the Christian stuff, is reorganizing the army. The Limitanii, able to move faster, be more mobile, respond to enemy threats, all that good stuff. Successful campaigns against the tribes on the Roman frontiers, the Franks, the Alemanni, the Goths, etc., etc. Yeah, and of course we mentioned a critique of Constantine is, like a lot of these emperors, the succession. And this is the thing that Diocletian tried, is that Diocletian set up a stable system of succession. It just failed as soon as he left. That's the problem. But you can give him props for trying, at least harder than a lot of people. Succession is another downside to Constantine, but that's a... How is Constantine at the bottom of Optimus Princeps? He should be behind Aurelian. Well, he's not better than Diocletian. I think we need to... What do we think about Constantine's place in Optimus Princeps? Should we... Where would we place him amongst this bunch? That's my question. I don't think I could put him higher than Diocletian, because in my view, Diocletian implemented and attempted to implement solutions to the long-term issues facing the empire in a more cerebral way than Constantine did. Constantine himself looked up to Diocletian. Ahead of Trajan and Hadrian. I don't know. What do we think? Ahead of Trajan? Trajan, who brought the empire to its greatest extent. Generous. Great warrior. He's a saint. That's got to count for something. That doesn't count. Not here. I think we can definitely put Constantine above Hadrian. I mean, Hadrian secured the empire. Constantine literally reunited the empire after a time of great chaos. So I think ahead of Hadrian. I'm not sure, though. Ahead of Trajan, that's tough. That's tough, for sure. Yes, and Light is correct. Yeah, achieving sainthood, pretty remarkable for a Roman emperor. Yes, Zedediah watches the statue of Constantine every morning. Yep, Constantine suffers with a messed up family, bad succession, but so did Augustus, and he is right at the top. And he's, yeah. I mean, Augustus is the number one. I'm sorry, you can't. He just is. Yeah, Augustus is the greatest of all time, undeniably. Augustus is who all following emperors would model themselves after. There are, as we can see, a couple of great emperors. Legendary emperors, but the first and the best, as Shad puts it. Absolutely. Alright. We are done. We're not ranking any more today. We're gonna have to do a part 2. To be fair, when I started this stream, I said we might get to Aurelian or Constantine, and we got to Constantine. It's been 3.5 hours, you know. So let's look over our list, see if we want to move anything around, and then we're gonna finish for today. So, and give your opinions as we go through them. Optimus Princeps in our top tier, we've got, in order, Augustus, Aurelian, Diocletian, Trajan, Constantine the Great, and Hadrian. Yeah, I'm trying to take as long as possible to circle back around to Tiberius. So that's our top tier. I mean, obviously, like I said, this is a joint list between myself and chat, y'all watching live. But, you know, it can't be unanimous, because not everyone can agree on everything. Alright. Great. Gallienus, Marcus Aurelius, Probus, Claudius. I think Gallienus deserves to be at the top. Everything I've learned about him today. Plus, I think Marcus Aurelius is a little overrated. Claudius before Probus. You mean like this? What do we think about that? You think Probus should be at the bottom of great, or Claudius? Alright, I think that's fair to Claudius. Alright, Tiberius. Let's just get to Tiberius, okay? We'll just get to Tiberius, because that's what everybody wants to talk about. He's indecent right now. Yes, if only Germanicus, but unfortunately not. We have some, I remember, we had some, you could say some anti-Tiberius chatters early on. But we also have some pro-Tiberius chatters. Tiberius should be in good. I will say the only thing that, you know, the only tough thing about putting Tiberius in good is that, you know, he was rather paranoid, brutal, that kind of thing. And of course, that would become a lot more common later on. But immediately following Augustus, that was not necessarily what people were ready for. Or what people were expecting, you know? So it's like, when you look at how paranoid he was, it's kind of like, you can't necessarily be like, well, that's just how all the emperors were at that time. Like, no, that was Tiberius. Yeah, I gotta be honest, I know some of y'all want me to move him up to good, but I think that Tiberius is more a top-tier decent emperor than a good emperor. That's what I think. Because, you know, I think the question is, it's like, we're talking about good versus, like, you know, top-tier mediocre. And I think he's closer to mediocre than he is to, like, a real good emperor. But I think high decent is fine. Seems to be a good compromise position. Alright, we got Tiberius out the way. What do we think about the rest of the good tier? Severus, Septimius Severus, Jesus, Antoninus Pius, Vespasian, Domitian, Galerius, Nerva. I think the only questions about this one were, first off, if Galerius should be moved up, but I think given the circumstances, given his whole reign, I don't think we can move him any higher, or at least I can't. And then earlier there was a big debate about Antoninus Pius, about whether he should be moved up or not. Now, feel free to voice your opinion. I'm curious to hear what everybody thinks about that. In my opinion, I still think that Antoninus Pius belongs in high good, because he didn't necessarily face some of the challenges that some of the emperors in great did. But if we have any Antoninus Pius supporters, then, you know, feel free to voice your opinion. Antoninus Pius should be the highest good. Okay, so you're saying you want to move him above Septimius Severus, who did sack Ctesiphon. We gotta remember. I mean, sacking Ctesiphon, always an impressive W for a Roman emperor. But, you know, Septimius Severus, there's also... is, I think, more mixed. I think Septimius Severus is more mixed than Antoninus Pius. That's what I'll say about him. And so I can see the argument to put Pius above him. You say scrap that, Zedediah, but I think you've convinced me now. Yeah, Perkunos points something out. The whole Severan Dynasty, it did not go very well. And I think, once again, as I've said with all the succession stuff, that's partially to blame on Septimius Severus and partially not. So you gotta give him partial blame for that. I mean, he appointed his sons as co-emperors, and they were terrible. And then it wasn't really good from there. I think Septimius Severus is more mixed. Definitely. More mixed. Trajan's third, surely. Well, I don't think so. I don't know. I think Diocletian deserves that third spot. I know that may be an unpopular opinion, but I think in chat, a lot of us think that, you know, think very highly of Diocletian, or at least what Diocletian tried to do, which is why he got that third spot. Alright. We have our decent tier. We have a... Yeah, well, if we do a Roman general tier list, we will also have a lot of very controversial picks. Very controversial picks. Yeah, no, Trajan is the peak of empire, but I think if you look at what Diocletian had to handle, that's why I have him up there. Trajan was the peak of the empire, but he was in a much easier position than Diocletian was. And I think Diocletian had a lot of good... And also, I think Trajan, a lot of his conquests were sort of untenable, unsustainable. I think Diocletian... Diocletian had some more long-term view of the empire. And though a lot of his ideas fell through, a lot of them didn't. A lot of them stuck, which I think is why Diocletian's in that spot. Centuries ahead in his... Yeah, we're getting a lot of Agrippa and Germanicus love. Yeah, we can... Agrippa. Okay, I'm not keeping that tier. But, you know, just imagine it. The imaginary Agrippa tier light at the top. Yeah, this is true. The Tetrarchy didn't last. I think, you know, the Tetrarchy didn't last. But I think it was a good idea that was made with foresight. You know, was made with a view of the future. So, yeah. Alright, what else do we have? A bunch of kind of randos here, to be honest. I don't think we have too much to talk about with all of these. I think where we have some discussion is when we get closer to the bottom of the list. Okay, maybe Septimius Severus achieved the peak of the empire then. Alright, see you, Dennis. Thanks for tuning in. So, let's take a look at our list from bad down. We have Caracalla at the top of bad. And I know Caracalla is very disliked and hated. And I agree, you know, it was the start of a terrible series of emperors, a terrible dynasty. But he did do the citizenship thing. Is that why we put him in bad? Does he deserve to be at the top of bad? Now that I'm repeating it, it sort of seems like Caracalla might be worse than we originally put him. Honorius, yeah. Well, we'll get to Honorius next time. Don't you worry. I mean, Caracalla did do citizenship to all free Romans, but, you know, he murdered his brother, or, you know, supposedly, massacred a bunch of his supporters, was, pretty authoritarian, and not necessarily wasn't authoritarian to achieve anything great, was authoritarian. Yeah, yeah, Caracalla paid me off. Okay, yeah. Though I have to say, I'm like, if Caracalla's bad, I'm still thinking about Elagabalus. I gotta be honest. Is Elagabalus really deserving to be in terrible? Really? I don't know. I think Elagabalus might be low tier bad. I know Elagabalus is one of those empires that has, or sorry, one of those emperors that has all the stories about them. But I don't know. I kind of think Elagabalus is bottom tier bad, not terrible. I think Elagabalus is worse than Nero, but I don't know. Yeah, and chat, as always, is saying that Elagabalus is Optimus Princeps. Okay, well, the reason I'm thinking about this is because Caracalla did a bunch of executions and stuff. I know Elagabalus was cruel to his, I don't know, like subjects or whatever, but did Elagabalus ever do any sort of mass violence? The reason I'm not sure Elagabalus belongs in terrible is because I'm not sure that the impact Elagabalus had on the empire overall was so bad that he deserves to be in terrible. Yeah, Elagabalus was a spoiled kid by his mom and grandma. Clearly, you know, he was really weird as well. There was something wrong with him. You know, I don't know. He was not right for the position of emperor, but he was put in the position as a very young child, shaped by his mother. So I'm really not sure that Terrible's the right place for Elagabalus, I'm going to be honest. I think to put someone in Terrible, I sort of need more. I need more. Yeah. And same as Light says, I think a lot of this stuff is over-exaggerated by the historians of the time. Elagabalus probably wasn't nearly as bad as he's made out to be. And Zedediah points out Nero. I think the same thing's true for Nero. I think our perception of Nero has been seriously shaped by the biased historians of the time. And, I don't know. I think Nero isn't nearly as bad as people... I think he's bad. He's definitely bad. But not quite as bad as people make him out to be. Yeah, and Perkinos points out what I was thinking and why I moved Elagabalus up. I think Caracalla was way more brutal and cruel than Elagabalus was. And that makes me unsure about Caracalla. Do we think we should keep him in bad? I think Caracalla's one achievement is citizenship to all free men, which is an incredible and broad achievement. But I don't know, Caracalla was a bad emperor. He was cruel, he was a tyrant, he really was a military dictator-type tyrant, and the line that continued after him was terrible. So I'm kind of feeling maybe Caracalla should be moved down. Did he? Whoa, wait. What genocide did Nero start? I'm not familiar with this. What are we talking about? The persecution of Christians? Or what are we talking about here? I've never heard of Nero committing any sort of genocide. I'm thinking, because I'm thinking I'm going to move Philip the Arab up, because I think he might have been better than Nero. And I'm going to move Caracalla down, because now that I'm thinking about it, if I do a direct comparison between Elagabalus and Caracalla, I think Caracalla's worse. I know that Elagabalus, you know, the stories are more crazy and the scandals, but I don't know. I think Caracalla might be worse than Elagabalus. Yeah, Zedediah, I think... now, Nero certainly did persecute Christians, but I think the extent of that persecution is far overstated, has been far overstated by historians and Christian writers for a long time. That's what we're saying. I think the extent of the bad that Nero did is vastly overstated, though certainly still bad, certainly still bad. Though I'm trying to remember, I do think Nero might be a little worse than some of these random one-year emperors, to be honest. I think we had Nero high bad tier. I think Nero's more mid bad tier. Yeah, Bogdan makes a good point. I mean, the aftermath of Nero's reign was pretty terrible. You know? Either reading some newspapers in the background. It's my notebook. If that's... you're talking about the sound. Yeah, I think Perkunas, you know... Yeah, I'm reading the list of prescriptions. Perkunas makes the point, as a Christian, I'm obliged to hate the Antichrist, Nero. But that said, Nero wasn't as psychotic as some of the other people here. Yeah. I think this is right. I think Elagabalus didn't deserve to be in terrible, and I think... honestly, I'm kind of thinking that Elagabalus might be better than... Honestly, I think that Elagabalus might not be as bad as Nero, but I think Caracalla is worse than Nero. Oh, Light's objecting. Or, what are you objecting to? Okay, yeah, we talked about this earlier. The positive policies of Nero. This is true. I'm very split. I think I'm very split on Nero because... Well, I think Elagabalus was scandalous and bad and, you know... But mainly what Elagabalus was... I don't know, sort of ineffective. Like, he didn't do too much. Which is bad, right? Because you should be doing stuff. I think Nero was more... He did some good, and he certainly did some bad. Which makes it a little harder to judge. We'll leave him in bad. We'll leave him in bad. Trebonianus Gallus, don't really remember him very much, to be honest with you. Otho, Galba, Caligula. And then Bogdan was saying that Otho should be given some credit for realizing how bad the crisis was and killed himself and let Vitellius take power with little violence. Okay, so do we give Otho more credit for killing himself? That's the question we face now. Where is he? Where is he? I guess, but I mean, he was resolved to accept the verdict of the battle that his own impatience had hastened. I mean, it's not necessarily like Otho was like, I'm just going to kill myself now and save the empire, you know? Yeah, and Light, back to Nero for a brief second, Light points out something interesting. There's quite a bit of evidence to indicate that he was quite popular with the plebeian classes. I've heard this as well. Which initially, when I heard that, I thought, what? That can't possibly be true, but it does seem to be. Okay then. Well, I'll move Otho up to the top of terrible. So, now the question is where we put Caligula. Also an overspender, like Nero. I guess we had Caligula at the bottom of Terrible to provide some separation from Commodus. The question is that justified? What do those of us here think? We can keep Caligula in Terrible, and you know. Or we can move him down. And I'm just not sure that the first 6 months is enough to offset that. Yeah, I kind of feel like Caligula is fine at the bottom of Terrible. And there's also a good point to be made that a lot of this unpopularity was with the aristocrats in the Senate, and so once again, I think the issue, especially with Caligula and Nero, is that the sources we get are so incredibly biased that it is tough to work out what exactly is true. And our bottom tier is Commodus and Didius Julianus. Didius Julianus, just for purchasing the position of emperor. And plus, keep in mind, this is part 1. When we do part 2 and do the rest of this tier list, we may end up moving some of this around to, due to comparisons with other emperors. Good old William of Orange. There should be more Tiber fish bait, I feel. Well, as we go on, there will be more Tiber fish bait. And at the end, we might reevaluate and put more people in there. I'm thinking that we leave the list where it is at the moment. And we'll come back to it next time. I don't have a next stream scheduled yet, but hopefully I can do one relatively soon. Maybe in a week or two. That would be nice. And y'all can get your arguments in for next time. How about that? I'll post a screenshot of this in the Discord. And speaking of the Discord, I gotta always do this. I gotta promote the Discord. Because it is a good place to be. If you guys want to talk about history, you want to talk about the channel, you want to talk about, you know, videos, any of that kind of stuff. I'm trying to post the link to the Discord. There we go. There's the link to the Discord in chat. Yes, Gallienus is at the top of great. You can thank Shad for arguing that and Light for confirming it. And yes, in the Discord we talk a lot about the glory of Rome. We talk a lot about that. So, you know, everybody join the Discord. Yeah, Shad was the advocate for Gallienus. He was, you know, arguing his case. We must remember Rome, because the Italians certainly aren't. My goodness. Shot against the Italians. I do not endorse any attacks on the Italians at this time. Alright. So, we're going to end it now. As we end it, check out the Discord, and then also, if you're interested, this is the newest episode of my Skyrim Let's Play that I have going on my gaming channel, Cookie Gaming. I released it earlier today. Go and check it out, you know. We've met the Greybeards, Delphine, we're finding out what's going on with this old dragon menace. So, go and check that out. And we can continue all this Rome talk in the Discord. Thank you guys for coming to the stream today. I hope you had a good time. Stream has been almost 4 hours. I knew it would take a long time, and we've only gotten about halfway through. So, yep, good stream today. Thanks for showing up, guys. If you want to keep chatting, drop into the Discord. There's a lot of pretty active people in there, so it's a good time. Alright. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and I will see you all again next time.